Like, what even is the pitch for a Tangled TV show? The 2010 twist on the classic Rapunzel story is pretty self-sufficient, if you ask me. There's not exactly a lot of loose ends left open to explore. Your villain is pretty solidly dead, and any attempt to bring them back would feel very retconned. And your main character had a drastic appearance change at the end of the movie, accompanied by a loss of their supernatural power, which formed the momentum for the plot. The magical elements of the world are resolved. The couple got together, the lost family was found, we get a rundown of the fates of all of our side characters. Like, I'm trying to think, are there any loose threads even left to try and pull on?
Did Rapunzel and I ever get married? Well, I'm pleased to tell you that after years and years of asking and asking and asking...
Failed proposals. Multiple failed proposals. No, you're right. I do want to see that. Though the movie is perfectly self-contained, the world of Tangled does have a lot to offer a TV show pitch if you just think about it for a little bit longer. You have a flagship romantic couple, which has already seen some intense focus testing that has come back wildly positive, but you also have an established way to interject some romantic drama, the year's worth of failed proposals. And then of course you have a set high point to end the series on, the successful proposal. You have a quirky cast of side characters with plenty of room for development, a solid set of marketable animal sidekicks already built in, a clear central home base in the castle, but also some cool secondary locations to venture out to, like the tower and the Snuggly Duckling, a set of essentially required new characters in the form of the king, queen, and castle staff, which you would expect to be present and which are all pretty much blank slates that you have free reign over. And that's not to mention a magic system, which, while all the pieces that we have seen of it thus far are pretty much resolved, it's loose enough to build on top of and has plenty of room to grow. All of that is already there for you. That's before you even start thinking about new characters or new locations that you would like to expand the world to include. I 100% understand why they made Tangled the series. There's a lot of good ideas here. On top of being just a viable pitch, I would argue that it's also a rather unique one, at least for the Disney Channel. It's an environment saturated with stories about kids and teens, and Tangled is a show which focuses solely on adult characters dealing with a lot of adult issues. However, with Rapunzel being as new to everyday life as she is, you can cover topics that are more traditionally geared towards kids, and it doesn't feel out of place because it's new to her too. You have a romantic relationship which is ongoing from day one and has no reason to split, which is honestly rare to see in any media. You have a tie-in not only to the pre-established Tangled IP, but to the even larger Disney princess brand. It's obviously going to be popular with girls in your target demo, but Tangled is one of those princess movies with some serious cross-gender appeal. I mean, the only potential flaw I can see here is that you always run the risk of making your characters feel too separate from their on-screen counterparts. I mean, there's gonna be inevitable voice cast changes. What? They got Mandy Moore, Zachary Levi, and pretty much everybody else to come back and reprise their roles. So why isn't everybody talking about this show? This show did not do well. It did fine at launch, but it dropped in ratings pretty steeply after that and just sort of limped past the finish line at the beginning of the pandemic, fittingly enough.
Ladies and gentlemen of Corona.
Its finale of 3 seasons couldn't even break 500,000 viewers. When I tell you this show flopped, I need you to understand that they changed the title of the show halfway through in a desperate attempt to try and salvage ratings. How is that possible? This sounded like such a good idea. I mean, just glancing at the pilot, it seems to be doing a lot to set up the show for success. We're following largely the same cast as we did in the movie. You've got Rapunzel, Eugene, Maximus, and Pascal with the same dynamics as we left them with. Additionally, this pilot has songs in it.
This is life after happily ever after.
I didn't expect that, but the songs are good.
Now our adventures
can come to a close, living happily ever after all.
That is such a solid lyric. It's just fun to say. Happily ever after all. Happily ever after all. Happily ever after all. This is happily after. The animation is certainly a lot different than the movie. That shift in format may be a little bit of a hump for viewer recognition, but I would also argue it was definitely the right move. The look of the series reportedly went through a number of different iterations before finally landing on this storybook-inspired approach, which, I mean, for starters, is just gorgeous. I'm serious. This show is an absolute pleasure to look at. I mean, it really excels in its use of color and lighting, and especially the wide shots. When they zoom out to show you the landscapes that they've made, it is always a treat. If they had attempted to emulate the movie's CG animation on a television budget, no doubt we would have ended with a lesser product, which invited comparisons to the original movie. With this change, not only do you have the opportunity to create the best possible visuals in your given medium, but it also allows the show to differentiate itself a little bit, stand on its own merits, while still pulling its characters and some of its concepts from the movie. This sounds like the definition of a perfect spin-off. So how does a premise with this much potential fly this far under the radar? I mean, assuming they don't randomly pull a complete 180 in quality somehow, this sounds like a perfectly faithful continuation of the Tangled universe. And spoiler alert, for all intents and purposes, it is! Most everyone who's seen it agrees that it is! This is a complicated topic because the show does live up to a lot of the expectations that it lays down. There's no one big obvious culprit, there's no story decision that ruins the show. The feel of it seems pretty consistent season to season. I personally love this series. It is no doubt a fantastic ride with some extremely potent storytelling that feels at times timeless and keeps you engaged and intrigued. And it's also just so bad. It's like really bad. Like, this is actively painful to sit through on a not infrequent basis. Yeah, this isn't gonna be like my last retrospective. I will not be hounding you to go and watch this one if you do not feel so inclined. Even though, again, the first full season is up on YouTube. Thank you, Disney Channel. Because I wouldn't honestly recommend this show to everyone. I don't for 1 second regret my watch experience, but I also don't think that it's necessarily going to be worth the effort that this show requires for a good chunk of people. So how does this happen? How can you make a show which is so consistently fantastic and yet so hideously abysmal at the same time? Well, today I'm going to attempt to take you through the watch-through experience so that you too can understand the delight and the pain and the boredom and the pure fandom glee that this show brings me. Spoilers for Tangled the Series. And or Rapunzel's Tangled Adventure. We open the pilot episode 6 months from the end of the movie on Rapunzel's official princess coronation day. And the first thing you'll notice is our titular character. I mean, I know I said the animation change was a good thing, but this is a pretty big visual disconnect, right? And don't get me wrong, she looks good, but she is not exactly recognizable at a glance. So that's like half the marketing for your show gone right there. Her defining feature is her hair. She looks like that for most of the film, in all of the merch, in the Disney parks.
Pascal, he's hiding right now. We are always playing a game of hide and seek. We've played 18 games today, and he's won 18 of them so far.
You can't have a Tangled series without the hair, right? Well, our pilot solves that problem along with several others all in one foul swoop. You see, the spot of ground where the magical flower, which grew from a drop of the sun, which healed the queen, which gave Rapunzel her magic hair, grew, there are now these ominous black rocks. They're indestructible and seem to be slowly spreading across the ground. When Rapunzel goes to investigate these rocks, they react to her and bring back her long blonde hair, which is now also indestructible, but is without its healing properties. This is a great change. It brings back Rapunzel's most marketable look and essentially gives her superpowers to make the show's action a little more fun. Additionally, by eliminating the healing powers, it keeps the stakes high because your cast can still theoretically get meaningfully hurt. Plus, the mystery of what these black rocks are and why they brought back her hair is a great foundation to build the series on top of. The rocks slowly spreading is a great ticking clock to be watching throughout the season. The pilot episode also introduces some important characters to know. You have King Frederick and Queen Ariana. Ariana is largely very supportive of her daughter. She gives her the journal, which will make up the opening credits sequence for the show to follow. And Fred is a little more intense. He's traumatized from already losing his daughter once, and so wants to do everything in his power to protect her. This means surrounding her with guards whenever she leaves the castle, and at the end of the episode, forbidding her from leaving Corona altogether.
This is the last we will speak of mystical rocks or magic of any kind.
This forms one of our central points of tension in the first season. Another point of tension, Eugene's failed proposals. Remember that? How on earth do they plan to put a wedge between this most precious relationship? Let's see. So Eugene asks Rapunzel to marry him at this banquet dinner the night before the coronation. Eugene, having grown up as a penniless orphan, is very excited to spend the rest of his life in a big fancy castle. And Rapunzel, having spent most of her life locked in a tower, is very eager to get out and see the world. All of Eugene's talk about commitment and settling down understandably scares her off a little bit, and she runs out of the room in a panic. That actually makes sense as a pain point in their relationship. Eugene and Rapunzel's relationship is somehow stellar, adorable, healthy, understanding all through this ordeal.
Look, I'll admit, I don't quite understand why you said no, but I promise to do everything I can until I do.
That's one thing that I would really like to commend this series for overall. Eugene is a character who I feel probably could have very easily become an abrasively masculine, kind of womanizing, iffy boyfriend character in this show, but no, he's actually a refreshingly positive male role model for appropriate behavior in a romantic relationship. I mean, just coming back to this episode, he would have every right to feel confused and put down and mad at his proposal being rejected, but no, he does his best to de-escalate things and go and talk things out with Rapunzel because she's also clearly going through something.
And in the meantime, we'll stay right here and take things slowly.
That's some A+ boyfriending right there. Good job. And Rapunzel is equally good at supporting Eugene.
Storming out of the room probably wasn't the best reaction.
They're just good. All the way through the whole series, they're good. By the way, their ship name is New Dream. Isn't that so cute?
You are my dream.
The last big thing that the pilot introduces is the third character in our main trio. We have Rapunzel, Eugene, and Cassandra.
It's me, hello. Cassandra.
Cassandra is Rapunzel's lady-in-waiting and also the adopted daughter of the captain of the guard. These two roles give her the responsibility to be close to Rapunzel at most times, but also the ability to do epic fighter chick stuff with her arsenal of cool weapons and dope fighting skills.
So, you sure you can handle yourself?
Oh, I'll manage.
She's the one who sneaks raps outside of Corona walls in order to check out the black rocks. She has a very cold, sarcastic personality.
Do you mind throwing your pity party someplace else?
Look, Cassandra.
Kind of the opposite of Rapunzel, so it makes for a good contrast. Outside of our core trio, we also have a whole animal squad. Yeah, our animal sidekicks are back. They're still involved in the plot, and there's even more of them now. Maximus is still highly involved in castle security and is the trio's first horse of choice if they need transportation away from the castle. Because we have more people who potentially need more transportation, we've added a second second horse to the mix, Fidela. She doubles as a love interest for Max.
I think he's got something for you-know-who.
Don't think about it too hard. The series certainly didn't. Pascal is here, and he's even cuter in 2D, somehow. Look at him! Look at this little guy! I have so much footage of him being just the most adorable thing on the planet. I'm serious, you have no idea. He is very definitively Rapunzel's best friend, but he's also expanded to have a relationship with some other characters. He and Eugene have a surprisingly fleshed out rapport. Pascal sort of lightly teases him pretty often.
To his face.
And Eugene seems to genuinely trust him to execute tasks or be an ear to vent emotions to. There's this little moment here where he catches him when he's about to fall and he's not even thinking about it. Like, these two are buddies. Cass also has an owl friend.
What's his name?
Owl.
Owl sort of mirrors Cassandra's personality within the animal team dynamic. He also serves as a bird's eye view for the team, which otherwise does not have any air coverage in most other situations. There are only a couple of things about the pilot episode that don't quite hit for me. Some of the hand animations seem a little awkward, especially when they do close-ups, like, what is this? As well as some of the action scenes. I don't know what exactly about this bridge sequence feels so off to me, but it just doesn't seem very tense. Also the ending. Oh my gosh, the ending. Okay, so the setup of the episode is that there's this evil crime lady, Lady Kane, who wants revenge on the royal family for some reason. Who cares? And all throughout the episode, we're seeing the build-up for her plan. A bunch of her goons get intentionally captured so they can get thrown in the castle dungeon. And then you find out that this stuffy Duchess lady that we met earlier in the episode is actually Lady Kane in disguise, which is a twist that I did not see coming. I don't know. Maybe I'm just dumb. She goes down to the dungeon to break her team out during the coronation ceremony. She gets like this epic fan clap moment. This is all great stuff. Lady Kane seems really cool. They break into the coronation and their big plan is to get all of the nobility into this wagon, except for Rapunzel. I don't know, I think they just forgot about her. And so they all get into the wagon. But the trio decides they're gonna fight back and they open the wagon door back up. And so everyone shuffles back out of the wagon. But then, what is this climax? What was their plan? This is the least tense scenario.
Get those people back here. Now!
Rapunzel, your hair!
Anyway, there's a bit of a fight scene afterwards, which is fine, if not a bit slow for the number of people supposedly fighting in this space at the same time. Also, Lady Kane hardly ever shows up in the rest of the series, so it does feel like a bit of a waste of an opening conflict. The pilot also has like this weirdly dark ending with King Frederick putting his foot down, I'm gonna restrict your movements using martial law.
I am forced to exercise my martial right as king to forbid you from leaving the walls of this kingdom without my consent.
So that's kind of a downer. And then we have a window talk before Rapunzel sings the theme song of the show about how free she feels.
I got the wind in my hair and a fire within, 'cause there's something big in me.
Which I'm not sure is exactly the tone that was set by the last scene, but whatever. All in all, a pretty successful pilot episode. There's just a couple smaller details to iron out, and I'm sure the series will flourish. Right? So the show proper starts out with a nightmare that Rapunzel is having about the Black Rocks. Nice and mysterious, ominous. I love myself a weird narrative vision sequence. We're reintroduced to the pub crew from the movie. Mostly familiar faces, but Hookhand is on his piano tour, so we get his brother.
Oh, yeah? What's your name? Hookfoot? I gotta admit, I did not see that coming.
But then we get into the meat of the episode. We want to know more about the Black Rocks, and so do the characters. Cass says she knows of someone who may be able to find out more about Rapunzel's connection to the rocks. There's tales of some sort of reclusive wizard, maybe, who lives on the outskirts of the kingdom.
Some say he's dangerous.
But if we want answers, he's our best bet, right?
Ooh, sounds intriguing. So they go visit him. He's a new character. His name is Varian.
Would someone please explain to me who this child is?
I'm Varian!
They do that fake out moment where you think he's some big scary enemy, but it turns out he's actually just an eccentric, smaller, friendly character. Always a great opener. Turns out he's actually an alchemist. You won't forget this. They hammer it home constantly.
It's alchemy, 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 alchemy.
Alchemy, we know.
He's definitely a little bit younger than the rest of our cast, like 14 years old, so he's maybe a little naive, but really ambitious. He has a pretty solid character design. The goggles and the hair stripe feel like a very deliberate attempt to get the audience to cosplay as him. His whole thing is that he tries to help out with science, but it just ends up blowing up in his face. I think this is a really solid addition to the cast. This is, after all, a kid's show, and with most of our characters being adults, it does feel good to have a character closer to the target demo's age range, or at least like an older peer that they might look up to. And Varian is able to hold his own in conversations with our adult cast, because some of them are very immature.
Math.
But also, he is very smart and brings a lot of powerful tools to the table.
Hey, if you come, I can show you something really special.
He also has another animal friend to add to the squad, his pet raccoon, Rudiger. Rudiger is kind of the Wile E. Coyote of the animal dynamic, if that makes sense. He exists to be mischievous and then get comeuppance for being mischievous. Anyway, Varian's disaster this episode is an attempt at providing his village with hot water.
Listen, kiddo, I'm no expert in whatever this is.
And the earthquakes that result from this give us a new addition to our hair lore. Not only is Rapunzel's hair indestructible, but also actively defensive, wrapping around Rapunzel and her allies in this protective sphere whenever presented with danger, explosives, or the such. In fact, let's talk a little bit about Rapunzel's hair for a second, because it is an important point to understand while watching this thing. Rapunzel's hair is less of a magical feature of her appearance and more of an overt superpower that you're just gonna have to accept if you're going to watch the show. In the original movie, Rapunzel's hair is 70 feet long and becomes quite cumbersome to carry around if not braided up. Now, Rapunzel in show still has that 70-foot length, but she's gonna be using that hair a lot. And unbraiding takes time and probably a complicated animation, so instead we have like these bead guys. She can scrunch up her hair into these beads, and that somehow reduces the length of it significantly more than it should. She can also let down her hair much quicker this way, which is most important so she can access the length of her hair at a second's notice, meaning that she is essentially Spider-Man.
All right, let's do this one last time.
Once deployed, she can use her hair to grab things, swing from things, fight people, tie up bad guys, tie up her allies, and she even has a sort of spidey sense. Not only does the hair recognize incoming danger to create its protective ball, but her hair also has a reaction to a number of different magical entities, specifically related to the sun drop, which gave her her original powers. She can use any of these abilities at any time. She always has the exact right length of hair in hand to grab something. It can always be conveniently balled up, small enough to stay hidden. If it looks like significantly less or significantly more than 70 feet, you just can't worry about that. We're not working with a realistic 70 feet of magical hair. We're working with a superhero whose abilities are inspired by the concept of magical hair. Big difference. Anyway, now that we have all of our moving pieces established, we have a lot of room to explore. Lots of magical questions on the table, someone in place to maybe help answer some of them, some fun ensemble dynamics to explore, superpowers to use, the threat of the rocks growing closer, and the king's close watch of Rapunzel. A lot to do. and I'm excited to see all of it. So what does this next episode have in store for us?
We have much to celebrate during this year's Goodwill Gopher Grab.
Gregorio the Goodwill Gopher represents half a millennium of honor and tradition throughout this kingdom.
Okay, so we're doing some world building? So, the plot of episode 2 is that there's this guy who doesn't like Rapunzel. Everyone else loves him, calls him Uncle Monty, he runs the town sweet shop, super cool guy, but he hates Rapunzel, and Rapunzel wants to get him to like her. So she disguises herself in order to team up with him to win the Gopher Grab, which is an annual tradition at Corona's Goodwill Festival. B-plot, Cass and Eugene are in charge of prepping the gopher, but accidentally feed him the wrong berries. So when the tournament starts, what is this? What does this have to do with anything? I have never seen such empty filler take up so much space. What is the point of this episode? We have a backlog of like 100 interesting questions to get to, and none of them were gopher related. We're not even developing a relationship with characters that we care about. It's Rapunzel and freaking Bing Bong over here.
Because I don't like you.
Why on earth did the showrunners think that this is what we wanted to get to? Okay. You know what? Maybe that was a fluke. Let's just move along. Surely we'll get to something of substance.
This is the princess's royal portrait. It's tradition, and she's got to decide on her look soon.
So this episode, Rapunzel is getting her royal portrait done, and Eugene is doing guard training. Also, Shorty is here.
Why don't you drown your sorrows in the yam?
Thanks, buddy.
That's exactly what this show needed at this juncture, I think. Let's just move on to the next episode. Okay, so in this one, Cass and Raps enter an athletic competition. And Cass is jealous of Rapunzel.
I didn't mean for this to happen, Cass. I just thought it would be fun to compete.
Doesn't matter.
Is this it? Is this what the show is? I thought, like, there was some cool fantasy stuff going on earlier. Can we, surely we can't go 4 episodes in a row with nothing interesting happening. In this episode, Rapunzel traps Cass and Eugene in an escape room together to try and force them to get along.
And I'm afraid your only way to escape is to work together to solve a puzzle of my own design.
You know what? I'll take it. Honestly, this episode does manage to be pretty interesting. Eugene and Cassandra are forced into this little heart-to-heart moment. We learn a little bit more about her backstory.
I mean, you ever imagine what your parents were like?
You know what? I don't really want to discuss this with you.
Very randomly, the Stabbingtons show up. They don't really do too much. It's mainly just movie pandering, but I liked the movie. I can be pandered to. All right, let's keep this trend going. What do we have next? Lance!
Nobody takes other people's stuff from us and gets away with it.
Lance is actually good. So Lance is a new addition to the show. He's one of Eugene's old thieving buddies, and he comes back into town to get his help on one last job.
What are you up to?
Up to me? You think I would come all the way down and see if it... Okay, I need help with a job.
Lance brings a lot of fun, mischievous, carefree energy into the room and serves to flesh out Eugene's backstory in some interesting ways.
Oh, we go way back. All the way to the orphanage.
They offhandedly mention this guy, the Baron, a couple of times, and that immediately gets you interested. We get to see Eugene straddle his old life and his new life. Lance is still genuinely his friend, but they now have these differing moral codes.
There's more gold coins in here than I can count!
So there must be more than 7.
What's wrong with you?
Turns out they stole a ring off of Queen Ariana back in the day, and so they think that's gonna come back around to bite them. But in like a sweet kind of twist, she actually covers for Eugene when the ring is found because she doesn't want him to get in trouble, showing that she respects him and believes that he has grown into this better person.
Can you believe it? Eugene found it this morning.
That's actually so sweet. And then at the end of the episode, Lance anonymously donates all of the treasure he stole to an orphanage, which kind of shows that Eugene has had a positive effect on him. It's good. It's cute. It's nothing to do with the Black Rocks. So there's that, but it is character development that's interesting and introspective and about characters who we care about. The show is getting good. In the next episode, the neighboring kingdom of Equus pulls a prank on the kingdom of Corona, and so the prank wars are on. And that's what the episode is about. Okay, I see how it is.
Come on, let's do this.
We have to sit through this whole plot line where Frederick and Eugene are bickering at each other about their prank skills. Turns out the other king, King Trevor, is one of the most annoying characters ever conceived.
You imbecile! This is my castle!
But wait, it gets better because the whole episode culminates in this epic seal pun.
The royal seal.
Why do you do this to me? In the next episode, Corona is having a science expo. None of the science is to do with the mysterious rocks, but...
Dumb science expos for dorks anyway.
Who's ready for the expo?
At least Varian's back. He's kind of fun.
Not that I'm doing this for Cassandra, but she's gonna be there, right?
Oh no! Turns out Varian has a crush on Cassandra, and she uses that to manipulate him into doing her chores for her so she can ditch and go do guard stuff instead.
I can't help you anymore.
Don't worry about me.
Yikes! This is decidedly not fun.
You should have won.
It doesn't matter.
Oh no. Next episode has a fictional holiday. Brace yourself. Let's hope it has nothing to do with rodents.
This thing is important.
The Day of Hearts is a holiday which was established when the leaders of two warring countries realized they were actually in love with each other, and so instead united their kingdoms. And this is explained to us through this cute little pop-up book animation. Okay. I'm vibing with this. After the unification, there were a group of separatists who still wanted the war and so broke off and are rumored to still exist to this day. Turns out, one of them has attempted to romance Cassandra in order to get their hands on the holiday's most prominent artifact. The book, which held the original confession of love and which all of the kingdom's lovers sign their names in as a holiday tradition now. We get to meet this cool new blacksmith character, Xavier, who knows all the kingdom's history. Hold on. Is this episode good? I was fully expecting another gopher grab, but instead we get a secret society with an ancient war grudge and a hot air balloon battle sequence?
Pascal!
If this is what all of the non-rock episodes were, I would not be mad. But if past trends continue, then our next episode is probably like some bottle episode about donuts.
You know, once word gets out about how good your baking is, no one is gonna care that you are you.
Or cupcakes, same difference. Let's just skip to the next time something interesting happens. Oh, let's talk about this one. So in Pascal's story, we learned that Pascal is Moses. For realsies, as a babe, Pascal and his mother are actively being hunted down by a murderous snake. And so to save her son, Pascal's mother places him on a lily pad before being caught herself. The lily pad brings him downriver, where he's discovered by a princess who decides to raise him as her own. Yeah, I'm down with this. This episode is actually really sweet. We see how closely Pascal and Rapunzel grew up together and how difficult it now is for them to get some solo time with each other. The episode culminates in our character's first return to the tower since the end of the movie, and it's a location that's treated with the weight that it deserves. You can feel the trauma here. The original hair is still just lying on the floor, a corpse of a past life, just rotting. Anyway, in the next episode, Cass is sick.
Guys, I'm trying to nap in here.
So that's what's going on. Okay, I did bury the lead a little bit there. The A-plot actually has Lance and Eugene trying to catch and then reform some child thieves.
First rule of not being a thief: don't steal.
Pretty obvious.
This is Red and Angry. They're pretty cute. And we get another Baron mention. So, like, there's definitely something going on with him.
We once tried to double-cross this guy called the Baron. He hasn't stopped hunting us since.
Let's see, what else have we got? There's a ghost haunting the Snuggly Duckling in one episode. We've got an episode about Max's enemy, an evil horse named Axel.
Looks like we have an old-fashioned horse challenge here.
I'm sorry, what?
This episode also features a horse wedding nightmare. So... episode where we meet the Queen's sister, complete with annoying animal plot device. Episode about Varian's village being consumed by the rocks. Hold on, we have reached something interesting again. So Queen for the Day is a 2-part episode at the midpoint of the season, which decides to suddenly remember that the rocks are a thing. The setup is that the King and Queen are going away on an anniversary trip, and so Rapunzel will be the acting queen for a little bit.
We're gonna figure out the mystery behind these rocks together. Just give me until my father returns. Everything is gonna be okay. I promise.
Also, it's a musical again.
Because I got this, I've got this.
I forgot that this show was supposed to have songs because we only got like one in the past 15 episodes, but we got songs again.
Henceforth it is written, we'll feed every cat and kitten here within the palace square. Fair?
Everything seems to be manageably low stakes for Rapunzel before the kingdom is hit with a historically bad blizzard. So bad, in fact, that the last time the kingdom had a blizzard this bad, it was due to a magical demon who manifested herself as a blizzard. Meanwhile, Varian's village is being met with not only the storm, but the rocks, which are destroying everything. Varian's father, who I guess is a bit of a town leader, seems weirdly hesitant to do anything about it, even though he also seems to have some sort of knowledge about these rocks. There's also this weird symbol that keeps popping up in all of his belongings. It's on the back of his hand. What's that about? The storm sends the king and queen off the edge of a cliff during their travels, and Varian's alchemy-based attempts to try and deal with the rocks only end up making things worse, inadvertently trapping his own father in this slowly growing amber.
I'm gonna go get help!
No, son, don't!
Varian knows at the very least that the rocks are connected to Rapunzel. So if anybody can help him save his dad, it's probably her. He sings a little song about it on his way to get her.
Let me make you proud. Let me show you the best in me.
Rapunzel, as acting queen, is scrambling to do her best to manage this kingdom-wide emergency. Eugene and the Goon crew volunteer to go out and help save the king and queen. Varian bursts in, asking for help from Rapunzel, but she doesn't have time to go to the remote edges of the kingdom to try and help one person. She's in the middle of a historically bad crisis, but she's also his friend. Is she just gonna tell him no?
Varian, it's a state of emergency here. I'm sorry. I can't help you. Not right now.
No.
Things get heated. Varian gets escorted out. By the time he gets back home to his father, he is fully encased in the amber in this gruesomely cinematic pose. The storm gets worse and shows no sign of stopping, so an evacuation order is put out, but the bridge off of the island falls apart. The only option now to save her people is to stop the blizzard by magical means, so we go and talk to our new friend Xavier. The magical blizzard of myth was stopped using this giant machine, and so maybe if they can find it and reactivate it, it could put an end to this blizzard as well. The king and queen rescue operation is running into bumps. Pascal almost dies trying to restart the machine.
Pascal, no! Pascal!
And they get it working just in time to save the kingdom from near total destruction.
I'm not sure I want
to be queen.
What a turning point, right? Like, it feels like the series finally woke up, remembered that it had a plot and some interesting world building. The songs are back. There's all this cool lore about the Blizzard, which was started by this demon, Xantiri, and the big machine created by Demanitus, who is kind of her rival. And you can assume that they're probably important mythical figures going forward in the magic system of the show. The moral conflicts make you feel just as torn as the characters.
No, don't hurt him!
Rapunzel! You promised! You promised!
Everyone's reactions to stuff just make your heart bleed.
Happy anniversary, sweetheart.
Happy anniversary, Ariana.
It was an anniversary trip. I really love what they do with Eugene this episode. Early on, when it seems like maybe just a fun snow day with Rapunzel in charge, Eugene is joking about how he's practically the honorary king in this scenario and he hates snow. Why did it have to snow?
I mean, it's cold, it's a pain, it ruins your day.
And it gets everywhere.
But when things get real, he steps up into those theoretical kingly duties and volunteers to go out into the storm and rescue the king and queen because he sees how real the responsibility is.
Besides, even a make-believe king has got to make himself useful.
And all of this from an episode with no bad guy. I applaud them. Using a natural disaster as your threat is such an underrated story choice. It does seem like the finale should, eventually have an antagonist. Maybe it'll be Xantiri, the Blizzard demon, or I guess the Baron. We've heard about him twice now. There's also that separatists group. That seems like a larger lingering thread that you could build on. Oh, sorry. It looks like I didn't actually finish the episode. Sorry about that. Let's just finish that out real quick.
Don't worry, Dad.
Oh, yeah. Varian. Yikes, buddy. That's gotta be rough.
I will make you proud.
We've got a reprise of his old song, but it's like extra sad now. That makes sense.
Whatever it might take, I'm finding a way. And I swear right now.
What is this?
Anybody who stands or has stood in my path, they're going to pay!
Varian. Varian is the bad guy. Oh no. My child! Please don't.
They will.
Woo! Yeah. So after that, I'm sure you guys are eager to see what happens next. And I'm happy to report that the next episode dives into our character's most pressing matter. Rapunzel has art block.
It's like I want to paint, but I just can't.
And there's this creepy lady, and she's doing these creepy art lessons. And so Rapunzel goes to those. No, trust me, you'll want to see this. It's really interesting. It has nothing to do with the main plot, but don't you want to know what Rapunzel does for her big mural? She gets everybody in the community to help out.
I've decided not to fight it all by myself.
Okay, so maybe that wasn't your biggest concern at this point in the series, but you know what you do want to see? Pascal and Max getting into some shenanigans with a magic potion. No, wait, listen. This is really interesting. So everyone is kind of getting on each other's nerves. So our favorite animal duo decides it's time to mix things up a little bit. So they go get a potion from Xavier that flips your personality on its head. And so everyone is acting a bit different than normal. Rapunzel is super grumpy and Cassandra is super happy. If that isn't a great setup for an episode, then I don't know what is.
I bet I'm better at swords than you are.
Do you see what I have to sit through? Do you feel it? That was like the first 10 episodes, was that. The whole time. 20 minutes long per episode. Anyway, the ending of the season is actually fantastic. Let's finish it out. So Rapunzel has another one of her ominous dreams, this time about Varian. That day, she finds a note from Varian asking her to go to his workshop and get this MacGuffin. So she goes to visit him. But for the first time, she sees the amount of damage that these black rocks are doing, which is information that her father has been lying to her about.
The rocks have been removed and the people of Old Corona are all well and good.
Inside the shop, she sees Varian's father and is immediately wrecked with guilt. In getting the MacGuffin, they are chased by these mysterious masked men through the black rocks, which are increasingly reactive to Rapunzel and her hair. The team decides to retreat to the tower for safety.
Watch your step, pal. That's where I died. See?
The pursuit continues, and desperate times call for desperate measures. The hair touch the rocks, and the rocks destroy the tower? I'm sorry? Turns out these masked guys are the palace guard in disguise, following Rapunzel at the order of the king. Turns out our MacGuffin is a scroll which has information about the Sundrop flower, which gave Rapunzel her magic hair. Varian thinks that getting his hands on the flower is the only way to save his father and stop the rocks, and uses this to convince Rapunzel to break the trust of her father and steal what remains of the flower from the royal vault. This puts some major stress on Rapunzel's moral compass, not made easier by Varian drugging the castle staff in order to make this whole ordeal easier. Varian does end up with the flower, but soon learns that it's not the flower that has the power of the Sundrop anymore, it's Rapunzel. That's what he needs. And Rapunzel is left stuck between Varian, who is becoming increasingly duplicitous and single-minded about this whole thing, and her father, who is becoming increasingly restrictive of her. Neither of which are good options. Guess what? It's now Rapunzel's birthday! And as a present, her friend is being sent to a convent for helping her sneak out in the pilot episode, and she is being locked in a tower for her own protection. Oh no. What are you doing, Fred?
You must trust that I have no choice.
What? Of course you have a choice! You're the king!
Eugene, absolutely furious, teams up with everybody to help break Raps out of her tower.
I've come to rescue you from a tower. Again.
'Cause it's like the movie. Just in time for a mysterious alchemical fog to encompass the castle and for the queen to be kidnapped by who else?
Varian.
Rapunzel talks with her dad and we get this mosaic flashback. That's so beautiful. Apparently, he knew that the rocks were coming this whole time. Like, since she was born. He was warned about them when he took the flower to save his wife by, get this, Varian's dad? What? Does that have to do with the mark on the back of his hand? Is that to do with the rocks? Because he knows about the rocks and he... Sorry. Okay, he apologizes and the team strategizes about how to get the queen back. Cue possibly the best musical number in the whole show. If you have encountered something from this show out in the wild, chances are pretty good it's this number, Ready As I'll Ever Be. It has a number of different fan animatics online for like Star Versus and Miraculous with millions of views each. It's a super theater show number, so theater kids tend to latch on to it for good reason. It's such a bop. Every time I think about it, I want to listen to it. I'm gonna listen to it real quick. Just like 5 times.
Some justice at last will be served.
Please. Together we will guarantee
a moment's at hand. Ready as I'll ever be.
The team thinks they're being clever, but Varian is one step ahead. He's seen that Rapunzel isn't willing to help him, and so he has taken her mother to force her to help him. You think, well, maybe they'll be able to talk it out. Surely he isn't that serious a threat. He's not gonna do anything stupid. And then this happens.
Oh, and I almost forgot we're kind of on a time crunch here, so I'm gonna need to speed things along.
Varian, stop!
Well. Shall we get started?
This kid. This is good. This is good. So Rapunzel complies, but it doesn't work. His attempts to use Rapunzel's powers against the Amber don't work. And so with nothing left to grasp onto, he flies into a rage. There's this huge fight scene with robots and black rocks, and Rapunzel decides to just take her chances and grab onto the black rocks. She doesn't necessarily seem in control of them, but they do seem to be responding to her emotions, so they put an end to Varian's schemes before breaking through the Corona wall and forming a path leading Rapunzel somewhere. Varian is sent to jail. His father is still trapped in the Amber, and who's this? It's a new person with the symbol that Varian's dad has, and a sword that can cut the rocks? This show is so good. I love this show so much. I mean, just look at this visual. The rocks flattening to form a path, the broken wall, and the lanterns overhead. Because this does in fact take place on Rapunzel's birthday. That's right, they established that. And the fact that we don't get a resolution. That Varian's attempts to save his dad didn't work, and he's still bitter as he's sent away. And you still feel bad for him because you know where he's coming from. I think if I have one takeaway from this season, it's that the best character is definitely Pascal! Who did you think I was gonna say? Some of you might be confused. I can't imagine why, but you might be, so let me explain. You will be so much happier watching this show if you're paying attention to this little guy. Because not only is he just plain adorable, not only is his sound design absolutely killer, not only does he play a little mini guitar sometimes, but because he's an absolutely brilliant audience surrogate. Is this scene a little scary? Our main characters are all being brave, but Pascal can nervously duck behind Rapunzel's shoulders to show that it's okay to be a little bit scared right now. He laughs when you laugh, he's sad when you're sad. He is ready to throw down whenever you have the urge to punch someone. At any given moment, Pascal is usually feeling exactly how the audience is expected to. No wonder he's my favorite. He's so relatable because he's specifically designed for you to relate to him. He's also great at drawing your attention wherever it needs to go. He's small enough that he can jump around to specific people or objects and catch your eye, like a little green laser pointer. Obviously, most of the time he's hanging out with Rapunzel, but he also quite frequently hops onto other people's shoulders. As mentioned, this can direct our focus, but it can also show us who can be trusted and who is likely to have the correct opinion in any given circumstance. Pascal usually has the best judgment of any of our characters, and if you follow his movements, you can see who he agrees with. Luckily for him, Rapunzel has a pretty solid moral compass to stand on and endorse, but if she's doing something wrong or acting out of character, you might see him with Eugene instead, or just sitting on a desk by himself. If anyone is the reason that Pascal is separated from his shoulder of choice, that's one of the clearest red flags you can get, including Pascal himself. When he decides to take himself out of the picture, it comes back to bite him. My favorite example of Pascal being the best judge of character is that after we meet Varian and they do the whole villain fake out thing, Pascal is the only one who's still skeptical. Don't sweat it. He's also a great excuse for your characters to think out loud. We always know exactly what's on Rapunzel's mind because Pascal is always there for her to talk things through with. Not only is she actively voicing her opinions for us to hear, but she also has a listener who can provide some pushback or an alternate perspective or even just validate her feelings. It's nothing crazy, he can't talk, so there's not a lot of in-depth back and forths, but it does make lines that otherwise would feel just like weird spoken exposition for no reason, an actual conversation with a little bit of a dynamic. It's a very kids show quality to spell out people's emotions for the audience, but with Pascal, I never felt like I was being talked down to. And just as a character on his own, I feel like they utilize him pretty well. He shares Rapunzel's enthusiasm, but can be a little bit more skeptical and dramatic. He is a sassy little guy. It's not too difficult to get him grumpy, but then again, it's not too hard to cheer him up either. You can win him over with food. He forms connections pretty quickly and is always willing to be a helping hand, no questions asked. Also, weirdly enough, he is pretty talkative for a silent character. I cannot get enough of his adorable little squeaks. And they always pop up if he's got a thought on his mind. It is surprising the amount of information that they're able to get him to convey.
Yep, 6 o'clock.
He's small and so can sneak into small spaces, and in circumstances where that's useful, they take full advantage of that. And for the most part, it feels pretty natural. Like, it doesn't feel like they had to come up with stuff for him to do. They just recognize that in most circumstances, having a team member who is that small is useful. He can also camouflage himself or change color to whatever he likes, and they take full advantage of that. One of my favorites is in the season 1 finale where they're breaking Rapunzel out of the tower and they need to signal a ground crew from the top of the tower without drawing too much attention. And so Pascal goes out onto the railing. He's pretty small and unassuming. And then he changes color to blink bright yellow. That's so clever. Most of our episodes that center Pascal tend to focus on his size and ignorability, and the team realizing how valuable he is despite it being easy to overlook him. Maybe that's why I like him so much. He's the Pixel of the Tangled universe.
You are beginning to get on my nerve circuits.
Somebody draw those two together. They would be such good friends. But he really shines best in just your average episode. Chances are there's some really cute animation on him going on in the background, even if the plot isn't particularly interesting. I love this scene where he gets to operate a vegetable guillotine. He's such a good little guy. All right, back to the grind. Let's get into season 2. What have you got for me? Oh, new lore, like immediately. I'll take it. So we get this flashback to 25 years ago. There's this weird dark castle surrounded by the rocks. The two characters we currently have the most questions about are there, so I do appreciate that. There's a glowy stone, looks like a disheveled king. He tries to grab the stone to destroy the stone. I don't know. There's a big explosion, and that's how the sword gets made. I feel like I did get some meaningful information out of that, but I also have a million more questions now.
Our only hope is to keep its power from the world.
But Your Majesty.
Which is a good thing. That means there's plenty more substance for the rest of the season to get into. The basic pitch of this season is that it's a road trip season. This is explained to us in our opening musical number. Honestly, so catchy. Feed it directly into my veins. They're taking this caravan thing that seems to be specifically designed to be turned into a playset.
It comes with 323 pieces, including Rapunzel, Cassandra, and Maximus.
And hey, it's been a while since we've had a marriage proposal. Let's throw one of those in there. And this time, it goes wrong for comedic reasons. Eugene is practicing his proposal. Rapunzel walks in on him accidentally, and they just both stare at each other, sort of wondering if either of them should address that what happened just happened. It's so awkward. I love it.
I mean, if you want to go for a walk, you don't need to feel pressured.
No, I won't.
But just to be clear, I didn't officially ask you to go for a walk.
Okay, but the question was still out there. Doesn't that count?
It depends. Are you officially asking me if it counts?
On our trip, we have our trio, Lance, Hookfoot, for some reason, Shorty for an even less discernible reason, and as far as animal friends, we've got Max, Fidela, Owl, and Pascal. Last minute bonus edition, we've got this cool lady again. This is Adira. She shows up and is like, you're gonna need my help, but everything else is super vague, and so they fight, and then she leaves, but she's like, I will be back.
She keeps popping up out of nowhere and I don't like it.
Yes. I second that. Plus, we don't need her. Another person will just slow us down, particularly with all her...
Oh, I don't know. You're gonna need her.
I don't know what is going on exactly, but it's interesting. I am interested. And I love Kelly Hu, so you're not gonna hear me complaining.
You're amazing.
I know.
Go figure, in this season which takes place outside of Corona, Eugene's whole ex-thief thing is creating a lot more problems for them.
I say we take the scenic route. I love scenic routes. You love scenic routes. And you know why? Because there's scenery.
Eugene, are you wanted here?
Yes, I am wanted here.
And what's this? It's the Baron! It's him! He's here! It's the guy that they've been talking about. So now that he's here, do we finally get to, like, know who he is?
Hello, writer.
Stallion is the Baron's daughter, and Eugene's ex.
It's the dad of Eugene's ex? And he's going to force him to marry his daughter because he left her at the altar?
I'm making you a proposition, Ryder. Keep good on the promise you made to my daughter and marry her.
It's so much more fanfic than I could have ever imagined. It's bad. I know this is bad, but I also kind of feel like squealing like a little girl out of excitement. You've got this super overdramatic scene of Rapunzel finding out about the marriage, and Eugene just has to like look her in the eyes and say, yes, this is happening because the Baron is manipulating him with Lance's life.
But I've made my choice.
Eugene!
It's so much. And then we get a song about everybody's sad boy feelings about the situation, because this is a musical show.
If we could make a brand new start.
And a wedding crashing climax. Yes!
You had to poison his best friend to get him to marry you!
That is a good point, Rapunzel.
In fairness, that was my dad's idea!
Ladies, there's probably a better way to work this out.
Yes, it is so much cheese, but they're committing all the way to it, and I appreciate that. Pascal fakes getting knocked out so that he can make the final blow. Heck yeah, I'm telling you, he's the MVP. And the episode ends with New Dream finally addressing the whole proposal situation.
I understand now that making a lifetime commitment is probably the furthest thing from your mind. In other words, now's just not the time.
Oh. Yeah, you're right. Now is not the time. That is totally what I was about to say.
No, but she wanted to say yes, but he was busy protecting her from having to reject him again. Oh, it's so sweet. It's too much. Our premiere ends with the stinger that Adira has a second piece of the scroll, and the rocks are leading Rapunzel to the dark castle that we saw at the beginning of the episode.
To the Dark Kingdom.
Yes, I am into this. Dark Kingdom, mysterious blue stone, black rocks, romantic drama, road trip. Let's do this. Let's get on the road.
This place is... it's so sad.
Sorry, what's happening?
Maybe now that we've run the Baron out of town, this old city will turn itself around.
What is this?
Ladies and gentlemen of Fanteros.
Or this could happen.
Or this could happen. Okay, so we have this episode where they have to inspire the sheriff of this town that they stopped in last episode.
Captain Quaid?
Who's asking?
It's Rapunzel!
You know what? This is okay. I can deal with this. I can understand you want to spend a little more time in this location. You get to have a little mini arc for this girl that helped them out. You want to show that our characters are leaving this place better than they found it. Fine. Fair enough. But let's just move along.
I like to think we're leaving as friends.
They haven't left yet?
We would like to share a Corona tradition with all of you.
No, what is this?
Varderos Goodwill Festival!
No, please no.
Not one person has signed up for the gopher grab.
We're doing the gophers again?
Hey, yo, Foot, is this a gopher?
There's no way. It's the same episode. Rapunzel gets roped into doing a gopher grab gone extreme with someone she's on bad terms with. Why did we think we had to do this a second time?
It's a gopher!
It's the same episode!
And that gopher grab tomorrow is gonna make everything even better.
Am I trapped in purgatory? What is happening?
I hate you and everything you stand for!
Okay, the next episode, Adira is back. In this one, they get lost.
Ugh, we're never getting out of here.
Yeah, that's the whole episode. Honestly, I would take anything after the gopher grab episode. I can't believe they did it the second time. I'm sorry, I'm still not over it.
You know, we may actually want to cancel the gopher grab.
All right, shake it out. Let's keep moving. We're about due for some lore. I'm ready for some lore. What you got for me?
I don't believe this.
Are you kidding me?
It's an episode where everybody turns into birds.
I'm taking this seriously. Why aren't you?
Because I'm scared.
Okay.
You're all birds?
Well,
I'm the strongest bird.
Not the time, Lance.
There's a looming threat that everybody might become birds forever. And look at that. Rapunzel sacrificed herself, knowing that there were no more unbirdifying eggs left.
No, but that means you can't. No.
You ever pause at moments like this and wonder, what if I took these stakes seriously? You know, what if there were a chance that this episode, Rapunzel did become a bird forever? And then that was just the end of the series.
Please, don't leave me.
There's an episode about a fortune-telling monkey. Episode where the premise is that they meet the most annoying character ever created.
It's pronounced Spire. It comes from Spira. It's Latin, which is another language that I actually speak.
Why did you think anybody would want to watch that?
For the last time, I'm not annoyed with her. I'm just getting to know her.
We gotta switch it up here, guys. Let's try anything different. Okay, so they're on a boat now, and like 5 seconds after we're introduced to the concept of them being on a boat, they're immediately shipwrecked. I mean, I guess it's different. So in this episode, we meet this tribe of tiny little German leaf people who worship Pascal as their god. The plot resolves itself when they realize that they just need to feed this giant firefly less spicy peppers. Am I on drugs? What is happening?
The firefly only had an upset tum-tum from the peppers. All we must do is supply him with those stinky weeds and our harvest is saved!
Okay, no, we actually need to try and buckle down and understand this because we're gonna be here for a while. So the island where they've wrecked is coincidentally also the spot where all of the lanterns from Rapunzel's birthday celebrations seem to land. The island periodically gets visits from a fairy that comes to collect produce, so all our cast has to do is just wait things out and they will get rescued.
How do you possibly know all that?
I know things. Plus, it says it on that plaque over there.
This gives us a batch of episodes where our characters can get into all sorts of island shenanigans in their new island outfits and, yes, interact with the little German leaf people who populate the island.
Now our hero, Lizardos Rex, will defeat our enemy.
We've got the one where Pascal is crowned king, an episode where Hookfoot falls in love with a mermaid, and an episode where the team finds a magical idol which gives you false happiness. It is a full hour of inconsequential shenanigans.
Suckers!
And it's at this point where you might think, all of this takes place in the same universe as the movie.
She's trying to destroy the idol of Verschaffensbezeichnungsbeginn!
I should rewatch the movie. And so you do, and you turn it on, and oh my gosh, what is this animation? Everyone looks so weird. Rapunzel has such a baby face. And Pascal, he's infinitely less cute in 3 dimensions. Why is this so jarring? Okay, so here's what I think the problem is. The TV show did a great job of translating these 3D models into a 2D format. This looks like a perfectly reasonable interpretation of Eugene. But in order to make that transition, they had to simplify the design. And that transition does not work in reverse. Even though this is a perfectly fine 2D interpretation of this 3D character, this is not a reasonable 3D interpretation of this 2D character. And when you've been watching the show for long enough, that just becomes the default version of these characters in your mind. So when you flip on the movie, everything feels wrong. The movie is still so good though. And your brain does manage to recalibrate by like the midpoint, so it's all good. Well, that was a nice break. Back to the island.
You know, Max, there was a time I really wanted to own an island just like that. But now that I've lived there, I think I want a better one.
So that takes us to the episode where they finally get rescued. Max and Eugene somehow end up on a prison barge, which has been victim to a mutiny by a bunch of the show's villains, even the horse. It's a fun little romp. It feels very rewarding to watch this and know exactly who all of these characters are. We get to see Pirate Rapunzel, so that's fun. And they even bring back the giant firefly from the island. I am honestly impressed. And hey, now we're back on the mainland, so this should get things going again.
I am so surprised to see you two.
Another episode with the monkey. Okay, well, this is Vigor. I guess he's a reoccurring character now.
The old woman's a scam artist who passes the chimp off as some kind of psychic to bilk suckers out of their money.
Now that's a sound business model.
Can we please get some lore-related content? Please.
Let me guess. Ryder's in trouble and you want my help to save him.
Stallion? Stallion has lore implications. We've got Stallion in this episode. What are we doing with Stallion? Okay, never mind. False alarm. It's just wrestling. It's a bust. Let's keep moving. Oh, wait. Hold on. We're at about the halfway point. Do I smell a suddenly lore-relevant two-parter?
The stone and its destructive power must be kept secret from the world.
I do! Rapunzel and the Great Tree is an episode that centers around Rapunzel and this great tree. Its whole deal is that it was a magical tree corrupted by Xantiri to be her stronghold. The tree is dead now, so poses no threat, but the team must travel through it to progress on their journey. We're introduced to this new villain guy, Hector, in a flashback. He also has the hand symbol. Adira tells us that this is the symbol of the Brotherhood, a group that organized to keep people away from the Moonstone because they've seen its destructive power. But Adira believes that Rapunzel, as the sun drop, may be the one thing that actually stands a chance at destroying the stone altogether, which is why she's agreed to help her get to the stone. Hector sees this as treason. Answers. I love them. It's complicated, but it makes sense. Turns out the tree is the source of the incantation that Rapunzel would sing to her hair. The research was done here. That's so cool. That was like one of the only lingering questions from the movie. Like, how does anybody know this magic song to activate the sun drop? So it's nice that it gets tied up here. That being said, the research also shows a second incantation. Quick fun musical number break.
Buddy, you're my best buddy.
Rapunzel, what's up?
Okay, back to the lore. The Moonstone incantation is the sun drop's opposite. Instead of healing, it decays. Rapunzel sings it, her eyes go dark, the room goes dark, it seems like it's sucking the energy out of everybody in the room, her hair goes dark. Oh my gosh!
Wither and decay, and its destiny.
It's pure fandom catnip. It's so good. Rapunzel has to use it to kill the tree when it comes back to life, but Cass is telling her not to do it because she doesn't have full control over herself while she's doing the incantation, and it ends up withering her arm when she's trying to protect her. So that understandably deepens the rift between those two, which I should also mention that is a running thread this episode. Cassandra and Rapunzel are a bit at odds. Cass's job has been to protect Rapunzel, but she's becoming increasingly capable, and with Adira knowing more about their current situation than Cass does, she doesn't really have her role as the adventure advisor anymore either. To make things worse, Cass still doesn't trust Adira, so every moment where Rapunzel chooses her guidance over Cass's just makes her feel increasingly looked over. She has a great song about how she wants to do something meaningful, but fate just seems intent on constantly shutting her down. It's called Waiting in the Wings. The point is she's sick of waiting for her moment to matter.
I'll shed no tears, I'll only keep on waiting.
Anyway, that's why the arm thing stings particularly bad. Cassandra specifically tells Rapunzel not to use the incantation, but she does anyway, and Cass is the only one who suffers any negative consequences for that decision. And we will get a chance to explore all that, but before we get there, I know what you've been wondering. What's Hookfoot's deal?
I'm thrilled!
Well, we get a whole episode dedicated to his and his brother's relationship, and let me tell ya, it's a lot. So apparently Hookfoot had a dream that he wanted to become a dancer, but you know, Hookfoot. His brother, despite living his dream of being a successful pianist, thinks this dream is stupid. He has a musical number about this. Nope, not Hookfoot, Hookhand.
Too bad that your life ain't as awesome as my life. You know what I mean? Keeps living my dream.
I love this. There's something so great about a song, a musical number that says, your life sucks, but my life is great.
Your dreams were lame, stupid, poor dreams.
Top tier villain song format. And then we have this great development where it turns out Hookhand is playing for what sounds like the worst person ever. And then they cut to King Trevor and you're like, yeah, that is the worst person ever.
You are 3 minutes late, you impunctual, lumpy-faced melody pirate.
Building off of the last Trevor episode, there's a whole seal wedding going on, complete with more seal puns.
You pick the seal to be the judge?
Of course! That is, after all, her official title. She is the seal of approval.
And the episode ends, how else, but in an epic dance-off. I can't even be mad. The good news is this episode takes Hookfoot out of the main cast for the rest of the season, so I think that's a net positive. Okay, back to our Casunzel conflict. They choose to explore the newfound tension between these two using a magic wand, which accidentally erases Rapunzel's memory, resetting her to never left the tower status. And this episode plays out like pretty much exactly like the first half of the movie, just with Cassandra this time. I feel like there were probably some more productive ways to dig into their issues with each other. If you are set on this whole memory erasing plot, I think it probably would have played better if you paired up Raps with Eugene. At least then you'd have some good angst potential, and we could see how he's changed since that first encounter based off of how he handles things differently. I don't know. I don't think this episode is actually doing that much. If it were, we would not have a scene of Rapunzel fighting this goat that lasts this long.
No. No.
Next, we have a trio of episodes that all take place within this weird shell house. Okay, so the setup is that the caravan gets stuck during a storm, and so they decide to go into this house to take shelter for the night, but the house is a magic house, and it traps them inside with this guy, who it turns out is actually a demon, and he deliberately made it so that the caravan would get stuck, so they had to come inside because he wants to trap them in there forever. So that's that part. To cut things short for you, there's 3 episodes. The one where they fight evil mirror clones, the one where they all turn into children, and the one where Rapunzel is trapped in a dreamscape. The last one is obviously the most interesting one, with most of the episode taking place inside Rapunzel's mind, and her dream delusion being an idealized version of the pilot. Also, this episode, there's a vague side plot where like Cass goes into this glowing door, and then she comes out of the glowing door. I guess we'll see what comes of that down the line. After escaping the shell house, we get our last episode before the finale, and
Vigor wants to give you an important fortune.
It's the psychic monkey again? Why are we doing this?
You require no map. For I am Lord Demanitus.
The monkey is Demanitus. I didn't see it coming. I'll let it ride. So Demanitus, he was the rival of Xantiri. He's also the one, it turns out, who wrote the scroll that we've been getting information from. He gives us the rundown on the Sundrop Moonstone lore as he understands it. Turns out they are powers which long to reunite with each other, which explains why the rocks would be coming towards Corona. They're looking for the Sundrop. It also explains why after the season 1 finale, the rocks are now leading her to the Moonstone, because she touched the rocks have located the Sundrop, and so now have changed purpose to lead the Sundrop to the Moonstone because they long to reunite. That's the whole thing. It makes sense! Once reunited, these two powers will form the ultimate power, which must only be wielded by the true of heart. Go figure.
And you're a monkey because...
I could not let Xantiri find me.
At the end of the episode, Demanitus fully retreats into Vigor, so we don't get to see him again. And Eugene is left with one last ominous fortune for the road.
At the end of Rapunzel's journey, one of her party shall turn against her.
So our finale opens with a musical number about how our trio are super best friends, and nothing could ever change that.
It's now or never, so let's stand as one undivided.
It's gonna be Cass, isn't it? See, this is why you give the audience information, so they can feel the dread that I am feeling right now. They finally make it to the Dark Kingdom and end up battling this figure who we soon find out is like the crazy king in the flashbacks that we've been seeing. And then we also get the bombshell that he's Eugene's dad?
You're my father.
So Eugene is actually a prince of this dark kingdom. I am not sure how I feel about this twist. It kind of ruins the appeal of the character, right? He's a scoundrel. He's a thief. And this kind of almost like takes that away a little bit, right? Like there's this idea that he came from nothing and yet he's able to be valued and to do something meaningful with his life. But with this twist, it like kind of feels like he was always destined to be special and that's why he's special. If it's any consolation, Eugene seems to feel exactly the same way as I do about this twist. He has a whole musical number, like, I guess my whole life was a predetermined lie, and that actually really sucks.
I guess I'm someone else now.
I guess I'm royalty now, frowny face is quite the vibe. The more I think about it though, like it does present a nice symmetry. You know, the children of the Sun Kingdom and the Moon Kingdom fell in love. Two lost children of royalty somehow finding each other in the middle of the woods. Like if you just explained this story from the beginning and we knew all along that Flynn was a prince, it would be satisfying to watch. That would be a good story. I mean, not to mention, it takes the Rapunzel fairy tale back to its roots. It is a prince who climbs the tower to save her. And that tickles my brain in a very satisfying way. So I think maybe I am okay with this. Anyway, his dad suggests that maybe it's actually his destiny to grab the stone. After all, once the Sundrop and the Moonstone reunite, it will unleash the ultimate power. We don't know what that will do to Rapunzel. Chances are pretty good it could kill her. And so Eugene, in an effort to save Rapunzel, stops her from approaching the stone.
One of her company will turn against her.
Dude, he was worrying about who was the betrayer, but he was the betrayer. Also, I love that when the team sees him do this, they never doubt his motives for a second. Everyone's like, well, he must have a good reason. We know he loves Rapunzel. No way that would have changed.
Whatever he thinks he's doing, he must be doing it for you.
Anyway, he eventually gets a pep talk by who else but my boy Pascal. MVP, I'm telling ya.
Pascal? What are you doing here? Are you okay, Frog?
I love this duo. It's so good. There's a big fight scene in order to get into the Moonstone Chamber. Of course, only our most important characters make it through, our trio, and Pascal is also there. Anyway, just look at how beautiful this room is. Soak it in. This is good stuff. Rapunzel approaches the stone. We all hold our breaths to see how destructive it's going to be.
Cassandra? What are you doing?
What?
I tried to warn you, Rapunzel. You have to be careful who you trust.
Cass was the betrayer. They did a double fake out because they knew we'd see it coming. I don't understand it, but I want to know more. Wow. Okay, well, Just so everybody knows, season 2 is pretty commonly seen as the fandom's least favorite installment. Looking back, I can see why. There's a lot of dead space in there. You think you're gonna have this big epic fantasy road trip, but then they get stuck on an island, and then they get stuck in a shell house, and you've gotta have like 2 episodes to set up this monkey so that we can do a twist on it. It's not exactly what I imagined at the end of last season. And once you make it to the end of the series and you look back at everything, I think I would agree that season 2 is probably the least quality-wise. Not by a ton or anything, but noticeably. But I don't know, just looking back on my watch experience, I had a lot more fun with season 2 than I did with season 1. And I think part of that is just at this point you've caught on to how the show works. When you watch the first season and you're suddenly hit with a bunch of filler episodes, it is very disappointing. But when it happens in season 2, like, you're expecting it at this point, and so you allow yourself to just take it for what it is. At that point, you know that you're gonna get an epic 2-parter mid-story turning point and then a really cool finale, and they deliver on that. So I feel satisfied. Like I told you last time that DuckTales 2017 was a show that was gaslighting me, and I think Tangled the Series is a show that's love bombing me. Maybe they mistreat you sometimes. There's too many gopher episodes for sure, and that's inexcusable. But then the show is like, no, wait, don't go away. I've got everything you want. An epic 2-part episode with Adira and a ton of new lore and songs. You're gonna love the songs this episode. There's multiple of them. And I'm just here like, Tangled the Series. Maybe you aren't so bad. And I love this show. I'm too deep in now, and all I can see is the good stuff. And the bad stuff, you just gotta get through it. You just gotta get through it to get to the good stuff, because it's so good. But if we're being honest, we all know exactly why the fandom doesn't like this season as much as they do season 1. It's because Varian isn't in it.
Now, as you have probably guessed, I am a man of science.
Yeah, let's talk about Varian. Because in some ways, he feels quintessential to the Tangled the Series experience. He was a solid addition to the cast in the first half of the first season, the emotional backbone of the second half, a great villain when the plot called for it, a much closer age point for our younger audience members to latch onto, just a well-written character all around, and probably most importantly, a very easy character to ship. Every single preteen girl who watched this show shipped him with somebody. Whether that was their own OC, a forgotten side character, or just themselves. No judgment on any of those fronts. I fit into one of those categories. I mean, come on, he's an incredibly smart, just dorky enough, extremely confident science nerd with dyed hair and a tragic backstory fueling his secret dark side. Your target demo was always going to be obsessed with him. You don't believe me? You want to see how deep this goes? If you go onto Archive of Our Own looking for fanfic of this series, it's not Rapunzel who's in the highest number of stories. You know, the main character of the show, her name is in one of the titles? No! By about 200 stories, it's Varian. He is in 1,000 more stories than Cassandra. She's one of the main trio. She's the main villain of season 3, and Varian isn't even in season 2. Do you understand how crazy that is? He was like genetically engineered to form a fandom around him specifically, and it worked. The second biggest ship, again on Archive of Our Own, behind New Dream, is Varian, and a character who never even showed up in the show. Hugo never shows up. He's in cut content from after the show, but he's in the second most popular ship of the series. A large portion of your audience's favorite character isn't in any of the content that you just pushed out. Of course they're not gonna like it as much. Luckily for me, I don't have that problem because my favorite character is Pascal and he ain't going anywhere. But But still, I mean, I enjoyed the little disaster twink. I want to see more of him. I want to know that he's okay. And season 2 doesn't exactly have a good stand-in for him either. I mean, Adira is pretty cool, and she has a bunch of ties to interesting lore, but that means she's also largely an exposition machine, not a ton of character introspection going on with her. She's not present enough to make as big of an impact, and she doesn't have an arc that she goes through, so it's less easy to get hyper obsessed about her. She's not emotional enough herself to become the emotional backbone that Varian was. If this show is gonna stick the landing, we need Varian back.
Please, I wouldn't miss a chance to promote the merits of alchemy.
Season 3, let's get to Moon Sandra. So we open up on that vague subplot that I talked to you about earlier. We finally get to see what it is behind that door. Turns out it's a creepy blue ghost girl who likes to give exposition. She takes her into, I guess, Cassandra's own memories in order to help her remember that she's actually the biological daughter of Gothel.
Now, Mother needs to rush off for just a teensy tiny moment, but I won't be gone long, and this cottage isn't going to clean itself, you know.
Who she abandoned the day that she stole Rapunzel, and that's why Cass was adopted by the captain of the guard. Okay, just so you guys know, we're like 2 minutes into the season at this point. You couldn't wait for like a second for us to get our bearings before you drop this on us? This is so much wild info to be dumping so quickly. Not to mention, if you're not watching these episodes as they released and just binging straight through, this comes immediately after the finale last season where we learned that Eugene is also a lost prince. Could we maybe have spread out the earth-shattering family revelations a little bit more than not at all? So let's break this down. I do think this is an okay twist. I don't like the timing of it. After this scene, we see that this is Cassandra telling Rapunzel this story while still in the moon chamber, and honestly, I think they should have held their cards a little longer. Have Cassandra chase them out of the castle, and then they go the rest of the season wondering what it was that made her turn. And maybe during your epic 2-part episode, that's when you spill the beans. So you have that element of mystery for the first half of the season and a reduced timeline where all your characters have the relevant information, making it more realistic that these characters don't talk it out before then. But again, current execution aside, I think this twist could work. I mean, they did have it set up from the beginning. We've always known that she was adopted and she didn't want to talk about her real parents. Also, her hair is identically colored to Gothel's. In hindsight, it seems a little too obvious. I also really like that when the reveal happens, they have this whole duet with her and her younger self.
So I'll keep waiting in the wings. I crave so much.
That's actually a really good idea. And it would really hit the spot if it weren't like, again, 3 minutes into the episode. The twist solidifies our main friendship into being this nice narrative about sisterhood. It serves as a nice motivator for Cass. It brings the villain of the movie back into relevance for the show. In theory, this is a good idea. So let's see how it works in practice. We can see that the main thing motivating Cassandra at this point is jealousy. Rapunzel is constantly getting in the way of her advancing. Everything she does is in service to her. She's never allowed a chance to shine, and now knowing that she was abandoned by her mother in favor of Rapunzel, she's done letting Rapunzel be more important than her. She's got this amazing line expressing that sentiment.
Your destiny belongs to me.
Ooh, that's a good line. That's a good villain line. We break into an epic musical number about how she's embracing her new path. She goes off into the sunset to I don't really know what, and our team is left stranded. Okay, well, I'm still not sure I really understand what Cass is about right now, but I'm sure we'll learn more as the show goes on. Luckily, an entirely different threat materializes itself, so our episode can have some plot. While our team has been away, apparently Corona has been having some problems. Remember those separatists from like season 1? Well, they have taken over Corona with the help of course,
Welcome home, Rapunzel.
Varian, what are you doing? I'm glad he's back, but like, what is he doing?
Actually, as you know, I'm all about the science.
So these guys have mind wiped the king and queen with that magic wand from earlier, and apparently the plan is to erase the memories of the whole kingdom, but the wand doesn't function on that large a scale, so Varian is coming up with a gas that will do the same thing. The reason Varian has agreed to help them is that he thinks no one will be able to forgive him after everything he's done, and the only way he'll ever be accepted is if he erases everybody's memories.
It's not what they did to me. It's what I did to them. And there is no way that they will ever forgive me.
Oh, child, no. But with Rapunzel and her crew being back, they don't have any more time to let Varian work out the kinks. They'd rather just blow Corona up than lose control over it. So that's what they're gonna do. Varian is not on board with this. He didn't want to physically hurt anyone. So he turns on the rest of his team and ends up getting locked up with Rapunzel. They exchange apologies, and Varian sees that forgiveness is possible.
Okay, this is very sweet, but honestly, I'm offended. I can't believe you were going to break into something and you didn't even ask me.
And hey, now we get a redeemed Varian on our side. That's good. It's good to see him happy. I'm glad he's okay. I'm glad the mentally ill child ended up okay. We get an epic flying ship action sequence. The separatists are defeated, and I think it's about time Rapunzel keep her promise. So they go back to Varian's workshop where his dad is still frozen, and Rapunzel uses her newly acquired decay incantation to set him free.
Dad, you're alive!
Man. Just roll credits, end show, right there. That's the emotional catharsis we needed. I guess we still need to wrap up Cass. We should probably close out that plot line before we end the show, yeah? Okay, so into the season proper. I know how this goes at this point. We probably first have some filler episodes we gotta get through, am I right?
Oh, duck crossing!
Okay, so we've got an episode of Eugene bonding with his dad, Edmund. He is a little extra doofy. His whole gimmick is that he unconsciously says everything he's thinking out loud.
Now, high-five Frederick to show camaraderie.
It's a bit much in concentrated doses, like in this episode, but it's a fun enough quirk to add to the ensemble, and they do practice some restraint with him going forward. So all in all, I think I am okay with this character being added to the roster. He also has a very dumb bird to add to our animal friend lineup, Hamuel.
Edmund's only company is a crow who could get lost in a boot.
And then also his horse, Domino. At the end of the episode, we have a reminder that Cass exists. She is talking with creepy blue ghost girl, who I guess is now here too. We have an episode where those two thief kids come back and they're a little more aged up, and also I guess one of them is a werewolf. There's another little Cass tease at the end of this episode. Honestly, it's already feeling a little repetitive. Plus, it just hammers home the question of what is she doing anyway? There's a pretty fun episode where the kingdom gets split into random duos to go hunt for treasure. My favorite pairing is probably Xavier and Varian. They do this bit where Xavier won't stop talking about just random folklore.
You know, next time lead with the high doom ratio legend.
There's a time travel episode where Rapunzel and Pascal go back in time to the first Thanksgiving. No. To when Eugene and Lance are teenagers and do a heist with them.
Aw, teenage Max was so cute.
I don't know when they ran out of ideas exactly. And then we reach a very important episode in our review today. We're about to go down a bit of a rabbit hole. Bear with me for a second. We open on Rapunzel attempting to train her new lady-in-waiting. We've actually seen this handmaiden character quite frequently, just around in the background. Raps is obviously pushing her to become Cass 2.0, showing her all the secret passageways, prompting her to poke fun at Eugene, and she's just weirded out.
Do you want to zing him with some sort of witty one-liner?
I should go hem something.
I thought this was a cute expansion of a background character. Her design is cute, the animation is charming, the concept is stellar. I like this character. And the first time I watched this, I thought, oh, I see where this episode is going. It'll be another cute little filler episode where Rapunzel tries to make friends with her new lady-in-waiting, but can't because she has an unrealistic expectation for her to slot into Cass's shoes. She just needs to let this new character be herself, and once she actually sits down to listen to her, she'll find that she's actually really interesting in her own right. Friends are everywhere, you just have to be willing to see them for who they are. Nope! This is a flashback episode to yet another tournament that Raps and Cass entered back in the day.
Spirit bracelets!
Why? What is this episode doing here? Aside from just already being extremely similar to an episode that we did in season 1, now is not the time to be developing their friendship if that's what you were trying to do. The time for that was the entire previous 2 seasons of show. If you just want to reminisce about how good of friends these two were, you have plenty of options to look back on that are, you know, already established, that we already have an emotional connection with. Why not get nostalgic about a keepsake from an adventure that we know about and have seen and know the emotional weight behind? You really shouldn't have to create one out of whole cloth here. We have a lot of content to work with, and then you could tie that into a larger plot about making new friends after losing an old one. That seems like a solid kids show lesson, right? People aren't replaceable, so you shouldn't try and find a replacement for somebody, but you can always make new friends. But no, this episode gives us nothing new except for a brief glimpse into an alternate reality where this random side character had some fun plot relevance. She doesn't even get named this episode, so I decided to name her Abigail. She seems like an Abby to me, and the more I thought about it, the more missed potential this character represented. You know another thing about Abigail? She looks visibly shorter and younger than Rapunzel. Like, I don't know, around Varian's age? And that is one thing that I think could really help Varian's character, is some friends his own age. He's maybe 16 at this point in the show, and he's hanging out with a bunch of 20-year-olds. Eugene is a full decade older than him. The only other kids around are like maybe 10? I think it would do his character good to hang out with another teenager. Maybe forming a connection with a peer would be beneficial to a still developing and deeply traumatized brain. Not to mention, it sounds like he was pretty concerned with the public's perception of him, and we see more of that as the season goes on. He's worried that the townspeople won't be able to forgive him for what he's done. Well, Abby is pretty representative of your average Corona citizen. Giving him a bond with somebody specifically adverse to crazy adventures might be meaningful to him. A good little button to his arc. And story-wise, if you wanted to develop the friendship between these two, you could take the opportunity to have some classic teenager shenanigans, sneaking around behind the adult's back to try and fix some stupid thing that they've done. Would not be horribly difficult to justify given Varian's track record. That way, you can also frame Rapunzel and Eugene as the more adult figures who have grown into positions of responsibility over the course of the show. Based off of the very little knowledge that we have about her, it seems like Abby would be a good opposite personality type for Varian to bounce off of. He's this sort of inevitable agent of chaos, and her whole job is to clean. That's a starting point right there. You can build off of that. And if you potentially wanted to maybe, perhaps, ship him with somebody.
Each one is a single serving because there's nothing wrong with being single.
It's an age-appropriate romance. There's a built-in opposites attract angle. I'm not even suggesting that you do anything in canon necessarily. Just let them be friends and leave the door open for fans to walk through if they so please. And if they wanted to do something in canon, again, I'm not saying that they needed to, but this show does like to toss around romance a lot.
Hookfoot met somebody?
Aww.
If you want to put some romantic tension between these two, it would even be a closure to a loose thread. Varian had a crush on Cassandra, and that immediately got wielded against him, and then he tried to kill her, and then later she tries to kill him. In general, it just kind of crashes and burns in spectacular fashion. So it would be kind of nice to see him get a second chance at developing feelings for somebody. I mean, technically, there's nothing stopping you from shipping them in the show as as is. And so I did, along with like 3 other people in the fandom. I'll post some short fic recs in the description if you're interested. Anyway, point being that I think having any sort of relationship with this random background character would have been pretty beneficial for Varian. You know, the character that most of your audience likes the best and wants to see more of. They really should have taken the opportunity instead of giving us a duplicate episode. Okay, back to your regularly scheduled episode breakdown. So next up, we have the third in what I guess is now the King Trevor trilogy. In theory, I do really like this setup of the king and queen having to fall in love again after their whole memory loss bit, but they really just boil it down to, well, he's an introvert and she is an extrovert, and those 2 things don't go together. What?
Exploring? Oh, not for me. No.
But there are more seal puns, so...
The Navy SEALs!
We have an episode where all of our animal sidekicks have to team up to save the day because all of our human characters are trapped inside of a magic shell necklace? I mean, it's at least a unique one-off episode concept.
We have been in much worse situations. Definitely not weirder, but worse.
We have an episode where all of the black rocks are turning red because of Cassandra's fear, and they're causing all of our characters to hallucinate their worst fears. It's a fun, introspective episode. Varian is here, and we get to learn a little bit more about his insecurities around being redeemed.
Do you know what this is?
It's what's gonna help us sever the Red Rock's power.
Yes, but it's also the same compound that encased my father. You know, the red rocks make everybody else see hallucinations, but what I see is something that really happened.
Oh, this character is just gut punch after gut punch. But then we get this episode just way out of left field about Pascal adopting a dragon.
Dragons can even lend their own traits to their friends. Pascal! You've got a horn too! And wings! Ah!
No one needed this. I love Pascal with a furious passion, and even I didn't need this. There's an episode where they go back to the island. Yeah, like the Little Leaf People Island. They fly back there, and the captain of the guard is there, and there's more weird magic, which makes like 1,000 different Cassandras.
Cassandras? Cassandrai? Cassandries?
Going back to the island feels weirdly nostalgic this far in. Like, guys, do you remember the Weird Leaf People episodes?
Oh, right, the little leaf guys who think they're superior to human beings.
Remember how it was so bad that we had to take a break and watch the movie? Good times. Anyway, this episode is entirely inconsequential aside from the ending stinger. Cass and creepy blue ghost girl realize that they need to go back to Corona to get their hands on the scroll, which apparently has even more incantations on it. I don't really know what they've been doing in the woods this whole time, but whatever. They have a goal now. Oh gosh, would you look at the time? It is time for our epic mid-season 2-parter. The setup is that it's Eugene's birthday, but he doesn't know because he never knew the day that he was born. But his dad is here and he knows, so they're throwing him an honest-to-goodness surprise birthday party.
He has no idea that today is his real birthday. I've even avoided thinking about it around him.
Rapunzel is also taking the opportunity to propose to Eugene because I guess she's sick of waiting. Little does she know, we are overdue for a Eugene proposal in this series. So he's also been carrying around a ring, waiting for the right moment. It's a double proposal setup. Classic. But you'll remember Stinger from last episode. So before any proposals can be proposed, Cass crashes the party and goes full Maleficent.
Swell party. I'm guessing my invitation got lost in the mail.
She goes to find the scroll, which it turns out Varian has been working to translate. Luckily, they are able to destroy the translation before she's able to get to it. Unluckily, that means that Varian is the only way for her to get the information that she needs, so he ends up kidnapped. She manages to get the incantation, which gives her complete control over the black rocks out of him, and she rebuilds the tower out of black rocks as her new home base. Cass. Varian has a musical number trying to convince Cass not to be the bad guy because he's done that and it's not a good time.
You've lost your grip and lost your mind. All's not lost, don't be so blind.
Rapunzel and crew go to confront Cass and rescue Varian. For plot reasons, they need some sort of prism or crystal. Does anybody have a precious gemstone on them by any chance?
Is that a...
Yeah.
for me? You were going to ask me? I mean, I was going to ask you.
Oh my gosh, it's too cute. But also the end of the world is happening, so Varian gets Rapunzel the last incantation on the scroll, and she and Cassandra have an epic magic battle. The clashing of the two powers fractures the Moonstone, but also opens up some sort of portal so that creepy blue ghost girl can become a physical being. We do get the impression throughout the episode that Ghosty isn't actually aligned with Cass, she just wants to see her fight with Rapunzel, and we can assume this is why. Honestly, another banger entry into the epic two-parter catalog. Romantic drama, some fun team banter, some killer musical numbers, and some of the best action the show has to offer.
I said, let him go!
Next episode, we bring back the character who was designed specifically to be annoying.
I saw your balloon go down! Are you coming to help me?
I don't know how we got 2 episodes out of this concept. We shouldn't have gotten 1.
Where's the key?
Oh, I have it right here in my bag, which has its very own security system. See?
Unfortunately, 2 important things happen in this episode, so we do have to talk about it. First is that Cassandra gets her hands on a totem, which gives her control over everybody with the mark of the Brotherhood. And second, the creepy girl decides to go up to Rapunzel and say, by the way, I'm Zantiri.
You're Zantiri, but that doesn't make any sense.
Just in case you needed a cool lore drop or something. Figured I'd let you know. Why volunteer that information? It was completely unprompted. So there you go. That's our final threat. It's been building up from the first season, so it makes sense, but man. The next episode, we have Raps and Cass getting trapped in a cave underneath Cassandra's childhood home. So they're forced into a truce in order to make it out. This episode is trying to deconstruct some of their shared mom baggage, and there's these mirrors that play back memories, I guess, from Gothel and Cassandra in the house above the cave, but the mirrors are in the cave. I don't know. It's honestly a very convoluted setup. The issue between these characters is very possible to talk through, and they do a lot of talking with each other during this episode, and yet no progress is made. It's very frustrating. Additionally, just the idea that they're able to strike up a truce this easily sits wrong with me. If Cassandra's goals are to get revenge on Rapunzel or destroy her,
my rivals will fall as my power ascends.
I don't see why this situation would dissuade her from capitalizing on Rapunzel being alone with her in a compromised situation. The big turning point of the episode is that there is a mirror memory that shows a happy memory of Cass and Gothel together, and Zantiri slips it into Rapunzel's bag so it looks like she stole it and is keeping it from Cass, I guess, because, you know, she wants them to fight. She wants conflict. But if that's your goal, why force them into a situation where they're forced to work together? I don't follow her logic at all. Anyway, Pascal saves everyone's life with some of the clutchest quick thinking in the whole show. MVP, I'm telling ya. And we have a twist that the happy mirror memory was actually altered by Zantiri because it originally showed that Gothel was actually a bad mom the whole time. I do not get what this plot point is trying to get at.
Lousy little pest.
Do they think that if Gothel had been nice to her daughter at least one time, it would better justify Cass's betrayal? Or would knowing that Gothel was abusive to her the whole time instead of just most of the time somehow change how Cass would feel about Rapunzel? I don't get it. I don't know why they did this. We're 3 episodes out from our finale, and I don't know what any of our villains are doing. How are we supposed to be feeling about them? What's their plan? What is up with the mirror and the shard out of the mirror? And if we find the shard, that might change things because I don't know. Does our next episode explain anything?
How do you look exactly like me?
No! Great. It's a filler episode about a Eugene look-alike who's pretending to be Flynn Rider. Why is this here? At this point in the story, we are so close to the end. This episode would hardly feel out of place in season 1. Why is it here? What?
Brock Thunderstrike and my new pet, Hulk Lightning Claw.
This has nothing to do with anything. Can we please get something of substance?
Project Obsidian is a success.
Okay, we've got Varian back this episode. That's usually a good sign. He's made a weapon to help protect against a potential Cassandra attack using the amber that his dad was trapped in. That's dark, man. That's really dark. Meanwhile, Cass finds out that the weird memory mirror was manipulated by the creepy girl, and subsequently that creepy girl is Xantiri. She's like, hey, I'm not teaming up with you, runs off, and...
Am I the bad guy?
I'm sorry?
Am I the bad guy?
One more time.
Am I the bad guy?
Yes! You didn't know? I thought you knew. You were acting like a classic Disney villain. You kidnapped a child. You almost murdered your maybe sister? Like, what is it? What did you think you were doing?
Just because I'm pursuing my destiny doesn't make me a bad person.
No, let's stop. Let's stop and dig into this because it comes right out of nowhere, and it's worth evaluating why. Everyone, of course, likes to compare Cass and Varian because they both start out as allies and then morph into unrepentant bad guys before flipping back. And most everyone loves Varian's arc, while Cass's does not seem functional at all. Why is that? I mean, it's not exactly like Varian's arc is perfect or anything. Rapunzel not being able to help in particularly chaotic circumstances is not a real strong motive for a grudge against her. They keep on hammering home this promise that she makes, but honestly, it's not a big deal when she makes the promise, so it's weird that he hangs so hard on it later.
Give me until my father returns. Everything is gonna be okay.
His redemption seems very quick, and the most glaring hole to me is that once he realizes he needs Rapunzel to help release his dad just before the finale, he doesn't think to just ask her. She promised to help him at the end of the last episode. She seemed intent on keeping him from doing anything else drastic.
We can find a way to fix all of this. The rocks, your dad, everything. I promise you. I promise. Just this is not the way.
Why is your first thought to kidnap the queen? He's just gone way too far, way too fast for what we've seen of him. Like, if Rapunzel had vowed not to help him because of how he had manipulated her, that would maybe be one thing. In that instance, I can see why he'd feel he'd need to have leverage over her in order to get her to help. But she's here at the end of this last episode like, I will help you, please accept my help. And Varian's like, I don't need your help. And then when it turns out he does need her help, he's like, man, I guess I'm gonna have to force her to help me. But it still works, because at the very least, you understand the emotional logic the whole way through. He knows he's doing something wrong and immoral, but he doesn't care, because it's to save his dad, and that's his end-all be-all.
I'm the bad guy, that's fine. It's no fault of mine.
So even if his actions don't necessarily make sense, if they're for his dad, there's still a thread we can follow to understand why he does them. When it becomes clear that it's not even possible to save his dad, that's when he starts to spiral, because he has lost the ends which he has been moving towards. The ends can't justify the means when the ends never come to fruition. He's just left with all these immoral things he's done and nothing to show for it. So that helps fuel the realization that his means were never justified to begin with, and helps open the door for a redemption arc. Some people will argue that the difference with Cassandra is that her motives for turning on Raps aren't as strong. An initial betrayal paired with the hope to bring back a loved one is easy enough to wrap your head around, and Cassandra's whole convoluted Gothel twist is a much harder sell. I'm not too sure about that. Again, when it comes down to it, it's just jealousy. That's easy enough to get your head around. I think that could be enough for Cassandra to turn on Raps. But as we've touched on, what doesn't make sense is her goals. I cannot, for the life of me, figure out what she's getting at. I guess it's just a vague sense of power.
I want you and the rest of the world to know that I come second to no one.
She wants to prove that she's more powerful and therefore more important than Rapunzel, but like, that's just power for power's sake, and that's unequivocally a villain's motive. The way that you see yourself as the good guy is by having a justification for accumulating power. I'm protecting someone. I'm keeping it out of the wrong hands. I'm doing it to save my dad. The ends justify the means, but Cassandra doesn't have any ends, so there's no possible way she can justify her actions as being for the greater good. Like, yeah, I kidnapped a child, but I did it because I really wanted something that he had. Does that make me the bad guy? Along with that, her actions and dialogue do not align with the timeline of her betrayal. The line we get when she becomes Moon Sandra is this:
You have to be careful who you trust.
So what does that mean? Because the only way that makes sense is if she has been planning to betray Raps from the beginning. It implies that the decision to trust her ages ago in season 1 was already a mistake. That this was some premeditated mega scheme planned out from the beginning, but that's clearly not the case. We know when her betrayal begins. It begins in the shell house. But the expectations you set with this line from the very first moment we meet Moon Sandra is that she's someone who has planned this since the very beginning for nefarious purposes. So when the story goes on to insist that this character thinks she's in the right and doesn't see that she's the bad guy, you can't be surprised when the audience is confused. You are literally giving us mixed messaging. I don't even think this plot would be that difficult to fix either. You just need to give her some ends to justify her means. Going along with the idea that she isn't being listened to, established in the Great Tree episode, maybe have her concerned about Rapunzel's interacting with the Moonstone. What if it just makes things worse? What if the stone takes her power instead of the other way around and the rocks become unstoppable? But no one will listen to her concerns. So now her decision to betray Rapunzel and grab the stone is an effort to save Corona. And hey, now that she has the Moonstone's power, she might be able to control the rocks herself and remove them from Corona. She can be the hero. Maybe this was her destiny all along. Rapunzel and her ideas about reuniting the powers are unhinged and dangerous. Releasing the ultimate power? That could wipe out all of humanity for all we know. She must be stopped. This way, Raps and Cass have an actual conflict of views. There's a reason for them to fight whenever they bump into each other. There's a reason for her to think she's a good guy. Alternatively, if you want to put forth even less effort to try and solve this plot line, you can always take the easy way out. It's not Cass who's been acting as Moon Sandra, she's just been corrupted. The Moonstone has a corrosive power on the mind. It only lusts for the power of the sun drop, and so its hosts act accordingly. You can have Cass make the betrayal of her own accord, thinking it's her destiny, and then the Moonstone takes it way out of hand from there. It doesn't really allow you to dive into the character too much, but at least it makes the plot make sense. You get to keep all of the super fun evil Cass moments, because honestly, even though they don't make sense, those are the most entertaining parts about this character.
Enjoy your party, Fitzherbert.
And again, if you go down this route, you wouldn't even have to change that much. Add a couple lines about the Moonstone's corruption, add a blue gloss over Cass's eyes when the Moonstone is manipulating her, and there you go. You can justify the character flip-flops because she's briefly breaking out of control of the Moonstone before falling subject to it again. Boom, we fixed it. But no, we've got a full season of Cassandra doing the most villain stuff you've ever seen before asking if she's the bad guy. Alright, well, let's see what the rest of this episode is about, huh? Cass is regretting her choices and considering going back to the team. Obviously, she's very hesitant because she's been very bad to them, but she wants to see them again.
I'll have to find a way to get close to Rapunzel without being noticed.
Useless. Absolutely useless.
Oh, hey! It's Abigail! Abigail's back! This is exciting. I did not expect to see her again.
You're supposed to be collecting flowers, Faith.
And they have decided to name her. Very convenient for me. Honestly, I can't even be mad because Faith is a really good name for her too. But her middle name is definitely Abigail. Can we agree on that? Anyway, my girl is back! This is such a pleasant surprise. Maybe we'll get some screen time with her.
I can't do this anymore!
Oh, it's me.
So Cassandra is just pretending to be Faith, and the actual Faith runs off into the woods to cry and never be seen again. I'll be right back. What is this? Why would you have her impersonate a character we hardly know? You know, if you had taken my suggestions earlier and actually incorporated Faith into the plot before this point, you would have made this episode infinitely more interesting. Everyone's suddenly talking like they know Faith, like they've referenced her plenty of times before, and are surprised at her sudden change in personality.
Faith? Really?
Whoa, coming out of her shell.
But those are all lies. We don't know who Faith is. But can you imagine how much better this episode becomes if we do? You can have Cass pretending to be Faith in noticeably incorrect ways because we, as an audience member at this point, would know what Faith would do in this scenario. Maybe you can have one character suspect that something is wrong earlier on because they're better friends with Faith. If we're going off of my previous pitch, probably Varian because they would have become friends at this point. And you'd also get to incorporate a plotline of finding the real Faith after Cass gets revealed, which we don't get in our current episode because nobody cares about Faith. I guess she was just in the woods crying all night because we don't see her again for the rest of the episode. As is, it makes no sense why we're using the image of this random side character as a major plot point, and how our main characters are acting like she's always been a part of the ensemble. They teased me with the reintroduction of a character I actually wanted to know more about, didn't actually give me any new information about them, decided to nullify my perfectly good headcanon name for her, and then had her run into the woods crying as her last act on the show. This is a personal insult at this point. Is there any way this could get any worse?
That's why we're gonna make this the greatest Goodwill Festival ever!
No, you're bluffing. That's not real.
This Goodwill thing is a perfect opportunity to extend an olive branch.
Please don't do this to me again.
Come on, Gregorio. You can't wait for the grab, right?
It's a gopher episode. We're doing another gopher episode. There's 3 of them now?
What's a gopher grab without a gopher? You just run around and grab nothing. That's not fun.
It's the last chance we have to do anything you want before the finale. And we're doing another gopher episode.
It is a valley of gophers.
Rest in peace, Faith. Time of death. The freaking gopher episode. The 3rd one. because it's a trilogy now.
We need that gopher!
So Cass finds out about Varian's invention made to try and stop her, and that's the breaking point. She decides to be evil again. I do not understand this. At the top of the episode, she seemed to realize she had done something wrong, that gaining back trust would be an uphill battle. That's why she disguised herself. But then she's shocked when it turns out that Rapunzel saw her as a threat. You can't be offended that when you did evil things, people made precautions to protect against you. It's not even a lethal weapon, Cassandra. Please. Cass takes over the castle, and it's time for the finale. Was this your end-all be-all, Cass? Just to sit in thrones? I want to sit in the coolest throne in the coolest place, and I will do anything to do it.
This is the biggest challenge this kingdom has ever faced.
No offense, Varian.
So the team storms the castle.
It's locked! It's unlocked!
Rapunzel has a run-in with Zantiri where she explains that the Moonstone's power is growing because the eclipse— I'm sorry. There's a eclipse?
What's happening?
Could we not have established the magically important eclipse before now? Did we not think we could maybe cut some time out of the fake Eugene episode? Squeeze that important lore for the finale in so it wasn't just randomly... No? Okay. Cassandra's control of the Brotherhood comes into play because Varian's dad is actually one of them, remember? And he's helping the team, but then the mind control kicks in. Turns out Varian sabotaged his own father's helmet to incapacitate him in case of a scenario exactly like this one.
I took precautions.
Gut punch. All of our side characters get stuck in an alternate dimension to keep them out of the plot for a bit. Rapunzel and Cassandra bump into each other in the hallway and just sort of yell at each other for a bit. Why are they not fighting? We keep cutting back and they're not fighting. Okay, here we go.
I was hoping we'd be able to talk this out.
Max and Eugene are busy fighting the Brotherhood, which also includes his father, because of course it does. He was the main guy. Why would he not have... Should have seen that coming. Zantiri makes her big move, taking both the Sundrop and the Moonstone, trapping Cass and Raps together, forcing Cass to her lowest point and into a full-on breakdown that feels very real.
You can do
I can't do anything! Why won't you just give up on me?
The two of them reconcile, big exciting demon battle outside, and inside they find the tiny shard of the Moonstone, which was broken off in the mid-season 2-parter. This gives them a fighting chance. Cassandra is finally humble enough to let Rapunzel wield the power, and they defeat Zantiri by reuniting the Sundrop and the Moonstone to release the ultimate power, destroying her with the help of a conveniently timed haircut. Quick Cass fake out death before the ultimate power is sent back where it came from, up into space. We get a reprise of Happily Ever After After All for the epilogue. Remember that one?
And I'm happily ever after all.
Ugh, symmetry. Cass has decided to go out into the world to find her own destiny. Rapunzel becomes a great queen, Eugene an awesome captain of the guard, Lance ends up adopting those two thief kids, Varian even finally got the hot water to work. And a classic Disney closing of the storybook to take us out. Man. I mean, they did tie up all the loose ends pretty well. Cassandra is redeemed, the status quo is reset so that the marriage short that they made to go with the movie still makes sense. There's no lingering threats left. Why does it feel like I'm missing something?
Actually, wait a second, there's a little bit more.
Oh my gosh, the proposals! They started this whole thing. I can't believe I almost forgot. They did have me for a second there. Eugene proposes, Rapunzel says yes, Pascal is an excellent wingman, and the end. For realsies this time. So, that's it. That's Tangled the Rapunzel series adventure. What's the show called? I would say overall, this show pulled it off. The finale wasn't mind-blowing or anything. It certainly could have been a lot better. Cassandra's mess of an arc this season meant that whatever conclusion you went with, it wouldn't feel completely satisfying. The mechanics behind the Moonstone and Sundrop this episode are extremely underexplained. The Eclipse could have really used more build-up. Xantiri's ability set is a complete mystery to me. The machine they build halfway through literally has no purpose. They stop partway through to warp into monkey bodies. Like, it's not expertly handled by any means, but at the very least, it's not a disastrous ending like the DuckTales 2017 finale, which absolutely sucked the wind out of the sails of at least half the fandom with insane twists and rushed storytelling. No. Tangled played its big card at the end of season 2, which is smart because that gives you enough time to adjust to the changes, whether you like them or not, gives the story time to explore those changes, and lets the finale be pretty straightforward so you can feel satisfactorily conclusive. I appreciate that. So, with the whole picture in mind, is it enough to say that this show is actually good? Well, my take is that it is really good. Except for when it's really bad. But it is overall worth your time. Unless it's not, in which case, like, honestly, don't even bother. I wouldn't say that if you liked the movie that this is more of the same, because that's not exactly true. They have more of a parallel relationship, not necessarily a consecutive one. The movie opens like this.
This is the story of how I died.
But don't worry, this is actually a very fun story, and the truth is, it isn't even mine.
And the show opens like this.
This is the story of how I died and went to heaven.
And I feel like that portrays the difference between them pretty well. It's hard to articulate any sort of verdict or rating or recommendation because the show is just such a mixed bag. The fundamental problem plaguing the series is that at times it is an excellent serialized teen fantasy musical epic, and at other times it's a perfectly serviceable little episodic kids cartoon. And don't get me wrong, that on its own isn't a problem. I'm not mad that the Tangled motion picture now has some silly filler attached to its canon. It's a princess property. At its heart, it's for kids. It's not like this existing tarnishes its legacy or anything. It's just that it doesn't know how to mesh the two worlds that it has together very well, and that dissonance is a problem because they're still packaged together. One thing to note though is that those two versions of the show are generally pretty self-contained, and it's pretty clear which episodes are which. There's the episodes with Varian, the episodes with multiple parts and songs and information about the rocks, and then there's the seal episodes.
Ladies and gentlemen, and seals.
It's pretty easy to tell those apart. You will find plenty of episode guides online telling you what to skip if you just want to get to the important stuff. I'm sure you could probably even parse one together from my opinions in this video. And honestly, I would highly recommend that you don't utilize any of those. I'm about to defend the Gopher episodes. You better buckle up. If you have watched this video and determined that this show probably isn't for you, then it probably isn't for you. I hope this ride that you took with me was at least a little fun. But if you do find yourself with the urge to watch, I'd highly recommend that you watch the whole thing. Even the ones that it seems safe to skip. And there's two reasons for that. The first is that there is still some genuinely good content in there. Of course, there's always going to be cute Pascal moments to watch, but the humor is also usually really solid.
That's the great thing about horse guards. They can't tell time. That's right. That's why they don't have pocket watches.
I'm always chuckling at the Eugene quips.
I've had two things running through my mind all day. What is chutney? And you.
Lines that might not be particularly well written still have an expert voice cast handling them and manage to get me to laugh still.
Hookfoot only has two moods, surly and just the one mood actually.
Even Shorty got a few chuckles out of me.
Some say it doesn't exist. Others say it doesn't exist.
So, it doesn't exist?
Or does it?
Of course, the musical numbers are generally really good, and they're not in every episode, but they are in more than just the lore episodes.
Listen up! Listen close. You're disgusting, old, and gross!
If you're looking for more new Dream content, there's probably something for you to appreciate in every single episode of the show. Their relationship is ever present and never not cute. It's also just a good kids show. For all of the complaining that I did about the filler episodes, most of them do have a really solid and sometimes surprisingly nuanced moral that you'd want out of your children's television. Not everyone is going to want to be your friend, and that's okay. You are more than just a combination of all of your extracurriculars, so don't let them define you. The weird demonic painting episode has this weirdly profound thesis statement that difficult choices are what make us who we are.
Difficult choices are what make us who we are.
I'm still not over that one. It's a whack concept for an episode, but it goes into Rapunzel's choice paralysis after having to make some extremely difficult choices during Queen for a day. I don't know why you had the weird painting class set up, but that makes sense. And even when the A plot is a little tough to get through, there are usually some pretty good B plots going on. Our first King Trevor episode about pranks has Rapunzel continuously misunderstanding what a prank is and just doing nice things to people so hard that it freaks them out.
By the time he wakes up, he'll be so well rested, he won't even know what hit him.
Once our first Vigor episode gets going, it's a really cute red and angry story about found family. Our first Shell House episode has a twist that was really well foreshadowed and pulled off and kind of leaves you horrified. There are gems in every single one of these episodes. There was never an episode that gave me nothing to work with. And the other reason that you shouldn't skip the filler is that I would argue it greatly enhances your watch experience of the lore-heavy episodes. When I first got to Queen for a Day, the content hit me hard, but I don't think it would have hit nearly as hard if I hadn't just sat through the previous 15 episodes, which were mostly filler. Yeah, maybe they don't contribute to the larger narrative, but they force you to spend time in this world with these characters, and that builds an emotional investment that's not going to be there if you didn't spend the time to build it. When all of the townsfolk are huddled in the castle, sheltering from the storm, I recognize them all. I know what their lives are usually like and how different this is. I know what this town is supposed to look like. I've been staring at it for hours now, and seeing it suddenly empty, covered in ice, it just hits your gut a little bit differently when you know what you're looking at. That's the sweet shop. That's Monty's place. Everyone loves Uncle Monty, and Attila sells his cupcakes there, but there's no one there now. One thing the first season does a lot is this establishing shot of Corona and the castle. There's variation, of course. We get to see it at all times of day, and it's beautiful every single time. Like I said at the beginning, this show really thrives in wide shots, and it's something you just grow accustomed to. You get this nice establishing shot of Corona to ease you into the scene, and you get to go, wow, look at all those pretty colors. But then you get to the season finale, and they throw this shot at you. Holy cow! That, my friends, is how you utilize a Dutch angle. The camera tilt and the rocks shattering the sides of the frame just hit so much harder when you've had the clean, level version of the shot imprinted into your subconscious. There are so many little details like that that you're going to miss if you try and take this show a la carte. Yeah, you might get all of the lore. Yeah, you technically saw the best moments, but those moments won't be at their best. They require full context. And the best that this show has to offer, in my opinion, deserves to be seen at its best. And this goes for more than just this show. Pieces of art are created as entire pieces. You can't just chop them up and slice out the parts that you think are good and vacuum seal them by themselves as a solo product. It's meant to be a whole thing. To separate it is wrong. It was designed this way, and it may be flawed, and you don't like that, but most art is flawed. So that's the process of absorbing art, is to deal with the flaws sometimes. If you decide that the flaws in this one are just too much for you, and so you don't want to engage with it, it's not worth the time to you, that's fine. But if you are going to engage, you need to commit to engaging. The moment you try and dice up a piece of art to take things out, you are losing things. You might think you're being very careful and only taking out the bad parts, but you can never be certain. Am I getting all red? I'm getting so hot because I care so much, you guys. Now, could this show have accomplished the same amount of world building and character development without some of the dumber plot lines? In a show where every single episode had something to contribute to the continuation of the main plot? Yeah, if this show were better, it would do that. But that's not the show we have. We have this one. So to get that same effect, you're going to have to wade through some less interesting content. But hey, now I've given you the warning. At least you know it's coming. If you do watch through, maybe you can better take it for what it is and have a little more fun with things. If nothing else, when you suffer through the filler, it gives you an instant bond with the rest of the fandom who also had to suffer through the filler. And that brings us back around to our central question, which you might have even forgotten at this point. Why? Why didn't this take off? With so much of this show seemingly designed to facilitate fandom interest, why didn't that fandom ever grow to its perceived potential? The most obvious answer is that, like, half the show is pointless filler, and yeah, that's probably part of the problem, but I think it's far from the main issue here. Plenty of subpar animated kids shows have unaccountably large fan bases around them. I'm native to the Ninjago fandom, so you don't get to tell me that quality is a barrier to mass obsession. I'd argue that the main thing going against this was its release date. Something I've yet to come out and actually say is that this series was released in 2017. That's gotta be the worst timing imaginable for this show. 7 years after the release of the original movie, the appetite for Tangled content had surely cratered at that point. It's not soon enough to capitalize on the release of the movie, it's not long enough to really get nostalgic about. They even missed their window of the whole rise of the brave Tangled Dragons mega fandom. I never interacted with it personally, but I do know that it brought Tangled back into relevance in like 2013 and kept the momentum going for a little while, but I think that was pretty dead by like 2016, and at that point, this series is still over a year from release. If they were trying to capitalize on the nostalgia of Disney adults with an animated show, DuckTales 2017 was only a couple months away and did the concept much better, easily capturing both child and adult audiences with an all-star voice cast and some crazy solid marketing at launch. Tangled did have a good voice cast and certainly enough mature plot lines to capture an adult audience, but it just seemed so much more half-hearted about it. I'm reminded of the stories about the marketing dilemma that The Princess Bride faced. If you don't know, that film was a nightmare to try and advertise because it didn't fit neatly into one genre convention. It is fundamentally a love story, but it's also a swashbuckling adventure flick, a heavy drama about revenge, and by the way, also, it's a comedy. So how do you try and sell that? Your trailer is just gonna kind of come off as a jumbled mess if you try and show everything. So they decided to release the movie without a trailer, and The Princess Bride kind of flopped on launch because of that. Of course, it obviously found its audience over time, and I'm not saying that Tangled the Series is a cult classic on the level of The Princess Bride, but you can see how it has a similar dilemma, right? At its core, it is a love story, but it's also a fast-paced adventure series, an epic fantasy with betrayal and heartbreak, and also just a funny, goofy little kids show. Like, how are you supposed to fit that into a Disney Channel bumper for 8-year-olds? They tried. Would you like to see?
Sunday, November 19th, it's an all-new special Tangled event, Queen for a Day.
You've got fun snow day vibes and this cute graphic with everybody in their new snow day outfits. But then you also have to acknowledge how weighty the plot is that episode, and you get this.
I hope I'm making the right decision. You're making the only decision.
Be here for Queen for a Day.
What is this? What is happening? Disney Channel, tell me, please, what is happening? I guess you have to end on a happy, you gotta use your graphic again.
As the mysterious rocks inch closer.
Princess! My dad needs help!
Don't hurt him!
No, Disney Channel, no! And that's a real shame, because I honestly believe that this franchise deserved better. Not just this show, but the entire Tangled franchise. Tangled is a movie which deserves to have a larger world built around it. It deserves spin-offs and world expansions, and they deserve to have an active fandom around them. Or at the very least, maybe a wiki with a complete set of episode transcripts. It deserves a proper Broadway adaptation on par with Frozen's, instead of just like the Disney cruise ship 1 hour speedrun version. As cute as that is, I did enjoy it. It starts with Eugene stealing the crown and he comes down from the ceiling and then he stops to narrate to the audience.
Hi. How you doing?
It works really well, and that deserves to be on a main stage. Flower of Gold is a great song. You have all sorts of songs from the show to pull on now, and you'd have to like recontextualize them, but they're good songs. Disney, like it wouldn't even be that hard.
Bears will be flying, the people all crying, shouting out hooray on the day she returns.
Rapunzel is a great addition to the Disney princess lineup, and Eugene is one of our truly iconic Disney princes. We should be utilizing both of them to their full potential. Luckily, we do have this show. The world building has been done, even if it's not necessarily getting the eyes that I think it deserves. So if you feel so inclined, I invite you to dive in. This show gave me a lot. It brought me closer to characters that I already liked and made me love them, made me feel like I knew them. And I think that's worth something. And it's honestly hard to believe that it's all thanks to Pascal. I mean, he carried the show.
I'm crazy about you. I can't live without you. I'm stuck in the memories of me holding you tight. I'm crazy about you. I can't live without you. I'm stuck in the memories of me holding you tight.
Hello everybody, it has been a while. It has been a busy couple of months. You may have noticed I have moved. I now have my own dedicated parachuting kitten office, so you don't have to look at my bed and like the corner of my roommate's bed in my videos, so that's great. That's only part of the reason that I've been away for so long. The other one is that I actually have been making a bunch of videos. I made a series of a bunch of like 10-minute long videos for Lego about Ninjago and the Ninjago fandom. Those are going up on their site right now. Obviously, it's all super kid-friendly content, but it's still a lot of fun if you want to go check it out. The meme video is pretty good, the conspiracy theory video is pretty good, and then the Akita video, which I don't think that one's out yet, but when that one comes out, that was one that I had planned to just like make for the channel, and Lego was like, well, would you like to make it for us? We'll pay you. And I was like, I'll take that deal. Anyway, I made a bunch of them. Duck Bricks made a bunch of them, so you should be able to find those on the Lego homepage, I think, if not the Lego Ninjago subpage. If you're watching this near to when this came out. So that's why the gap between videos was so long. I was also making like a dozen other videos in that time. They just can't be posted to this channel. The next video I'm gonna be doing is definitely going to be my Dragons Rising video. It's gonna be a review, but it's also going to be not necessarily a review. It's going to be an in-depth analysis on my personal relationship to Dragons Rising, and that needs to come out before season 3, or else who knows what happens in season 3. I might have to change the whole script. I'm estimating about a month timeline on making that video, but who knows? I'm very bad at estimating timelines. I have a feeling that some people who have been asking for that video are gonna be a little bit surprised and or disappointed when that one comes out, but we'll see. Anyway, that's all I've got for you. Thanks so much for being here. Hopefully I'll see you sooner than the last time. He's such a good boy.